This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate second part of What If Fem Naruto Became Kyuubi. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
To say that Naruko was anxious would be an understatement. She has no idea why the daimyo would request her. Had she made a mistake? Was she having problems? Was her friendship with Kurama related to this? Despite having a good soaking shower, Naruko no longer felt particularly rejuvenated. The trip to the Hokage's office was among the scariest she had ever experienced. She was perspiring at a startling rate. Naruko froze as he approached the Hokage's office door. Her anxiety was growing. She was aware that the High no Kuni daimyo is in charge of this country. Who becomes the Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato is ultimately up to him. Naruko knocked on the door after taking a large gulp and trying to relax as much as she could. There was a muffled, "Enter," soon after. Naruko took a last deep breath and a last gulp before opening the door and going inside. Naruko noticed that there were a few people in the office when she first arrived. The Hokage was sitting behind his desk as usual. Iruka Sensei was to his left. Naruko was unaware of the identity of the ninja on the Hokage's right, who was constantly present when assigning missions. Kakashi Sensei was standing at the left end of the table. The absence of her team only made Naruko more anxious. Only she and Kakashi were present. Naruko didn't recognize the two individuals at the right end of the table. The first individual was a tall man dressed in a kimono that looked expensive. His entire body was covered by the light brown and green striped kimono. Naruko thought that this man was wearing a rather odd-looking headpiece. The headpiece had a huge white fan on top that resembled a black hood. A tiny fan bearing the High no Kuni symbol was in the man's right hand. A young girl who appeared to be no older than 5 or 6 stood to the man's right. Similar to 1010, the girl's brown hair was worn in buns on either side of her head. The girl's ears were covered by pink ribbons that hung down from the buns. Her eyes were brown and large for her size. She was wearing a costly green kimono that was too big on the girl. According to the Hokage, "Welcome Naruko, let me introduce you to the daimyo, Sama of High no Kuni and his daughter Naho." After rapidly gathering her thoughts, Naruko bowed to them and gave them the most courteous greeting she could. Naruko said, "I am Uzumaki Naruko, and it is a privilege to meet you, daimyo. Sama, Naho. Sama. It is an honor to make your acquaintance," with a hint of nervousness in her voice. With a slight bow, the daimyo responded, "Likewise, it's a pleasure to meet you, Naruko. Daimyo and Naho are acceptable, no need for such formalities. I have heard quite a bit about you," and her daughter followed suit. With her nerves somewhat calmed, Naruko said, "Hi. Though may I ask what it is you have heard about me, daimyo?" "Mostly of how you fought Zabuza and bested him by yourself. You are also the one to stop my wife's cat from running away. That cat has never left my wife's side since," the daimyo said with praise in his voice. Naruko rubbed the back of her head and blushed as she said, "I can't take full credit for Zabuza. My team did help me as well, and Kakashi did best him the second time he appeared." When the daimyo said, "Modest as well, it seems I did make the right choice after all." "Right choice?" a bewildered Naruko inquired. "Naruko, your next mission is a B going on to a rank mission. You are to look after Naho for a week and show her the life of a ninja. You will still get your normal D-ranked missions with an occasional C-ranked mission," the Hokage informed Naruko. "Not sure if this is a good idea," Naruko said. "I am honored to do the task, but are you sure it is wise? I trust you do know who I am and what I contain." "Yes, I am well aware, and from what I have heard you are somewhat close to the Kyuubi. Is this correct?" the daimyo asked. With a, "Hi, I am quite close actually," Naruko answered. The daimyo remarked, "That's good, shows you are open-minded to the things around you. I can see the doubt you hold over my decision. Fear not, I have faith that you can keep my daughter safe from harm," after observing Naruko's uncertainty. Naruko bowed and said, "Well, then I am honored and will do everything in my power to protect you, daughter." The daimyo said, "I trust you will. So I must be off. I shall see you again soon, Hokage. Sama," before taking a knee in front of her daughter. The daimyo said softly, "Be safe and have fun, don't be afraid to ask for anything," and the girl smiled and nodded. Before leaving the office, the daimyo gave her daughter a hug. "The daimyo has placed a lot of trust and faith in you, Naruko, so you must take great care of her. She will accompany you on missions, but they will be safe and devoid of danger," the Hokage said solemnly, but with a hint of pride in his voice. Naruko turned to the girl and smiled softly before saying, "You can count on me, Gigi. So shall we get going, Naho?" The girl approached Naruko at a leisurely pace. The girls grinned and nodded to Naruko. Naruko knelt down and gave the girl a tender pat on the head. The girl's smile expanded and then extended to Naruko's ears. When Naruko began purring, Naho chuckled, and then she burst out laughing as Naruko began to tickle Naho with her tails. After a few minutes of this, Naruko halted and turned to face Kakashi. Naruko questioned Kakashi, is team meeting normal time or what? No, I told the rest of the team to meet at 11, so it gives you 2 hours to show Naho around the village, replied Kakashi. One last question. Seeing that she is with me for the next week, where do I stay, because where I live does not have the space and it's one of the most dangerous areas in the village and me being there only makes it worse, Naruko said, fearing that the villagers would do something extremely foolish. You are more than welcome to stay at my house. I do have 2 addition bedrooms, though you might have to clean it first, Kakashi said. Naruko made 2 bunchins, one of whom went to collect Naho's luggage and the other to Naruko's house to retrieve some of her belongings. Thanks Kakashi. Sensei, Naruko said. While a bunchin accompanied Kakashi to his home to deliver Naho's belongings, Naruko and Naho left the Hokage's office. Naho whispered, "May I ask you a few questions?" As they strolled around, Naruko let Naho cling to one of her tails and said, "Yeah, sure, and don't be afraid to ask, you may ask anything you like." Naho questioned, "Why did you ask to move?" "Well, the villagers and I aren't on very good terms, so they tend to do some stupid things when it comes to me. Also, where I live is the worst place for you to live in and my house can only support 1 person, Naruko said with a smile. Quietly, Naho questioned, "Do the villagers hate you because of what's inside you?" "Yes, they do, but it doesn't bother me anymore and I have a few friends, so it's alright. But the friends I have my age don't know about Kyuubi. I can only tell them after the chunin exam. So could you please not say anything to them about this?" asked Naruko. Naho smiled and said, "Oh, okay, no problem. Is it true that you can change into a fox?" Naruko cheerfully stated, "Yep, and a fox isn't the only thing I can turn into, though I can only show you outside the village," but his tone softened toward the end. Naho shouted, "That's awesome. I can't wait to see it," while bouncing a little. Softly, "One last thing," Naho said. "Yes, what is it?" Naruko inquired, perplexed as to why Naho had asked so quietly. "Could you please treat me like a normal person and not some royal princess?" Naho asked timidly. "With pleasure, though never planned to in the first place. Now come on, we have a village to explore, right Naho?" "Chan?" Naruko said with a smile. This made Naho smile broadly, which made Naruko laugh. Naho exclaimed, "Thank you, Naru.ne, Chan," with delight. "Nay, Chan?" Naruko pondered in her mind the name Naho had given her. "Treat her well, Kit. Getting you on to her good side will be a very good thing for you. You never know, you might be able to call in a few favors later on in life," Kurama suggested. Naruko responded, "Thanks Kurama, but I will do it because I want to, not for the reward later." Naruko spent the next hour and a half showing Naho the village, including the locations of the Uchiha's former residence and all the clan's residences. Naruko displayed the locations of the market districts, the play areas, the academy, the summit of the Hokage monument, and the different stores. Last but not least was Naruko's favorite spot. Naruko told Naho all about the incredible ramen that no other place could match as she slowly approached her favorite ramen stand. Naruko stumbled when Naho mentioned that she had no idea what ramen was. How this was possible was beyond Naruko's comprehension. Someone who had no idea what ramen was believed that it would end the world, cause hell to freeze over, and cause Sasuke to lose his whole fanbase. Seeing the stand in front of them, Naho asked, "Naru.ne, Chan, is this place the one you were talking about?" Which caused Naruko to stop thinking about the end of the world. "Huh? Oh yes, this is the place. The place where the food of the gods is made, Ramen Ichiraka," said Naruko. Inside Ichiraka ramen. As she finished her 7th bowl of ramen, Naruko asked, "So was that awesome or what?" Naho was astounded by Naruko's appetite. She had just finished the first bowel movement when she saw Naruko finish her 7th. Still enjoying the flavor of the ramen, Naho responded, "It was amazing. The chiefs at home don't have anything as good as this." Tucci smiled and said, "If you ever need more, make sure to come and get some more." Ramen Ichiraka is owned and operated by Tucci and her daughter Ayame. As their top customer, Naruko occasionally receives complimentary meals in appreciation. Naho remarked, "Oh, well, I have to tell too. Sama about this place, hoping to return." Tucci inquired, "Who is your father anyway?" Naho stated, "Oh, he is the Hai no Kuni daimyo." Sama, as if it were well known and unimportant. Hearing this, Tucci staggered. All he could hope for was a positive word from the girl. The daimyo's sales would undoubtedly skyrocket if he liked this place. You won't find better ramen anywhere else, Tucci said, almost as if he were trying to promote his product. Well, be sure to tell him about us. With a, thanks Chuki. Gigi, Naruto escorted Naho out of the ramen. Naruto put a tail around Naho's waist and allowed her to pat and hold another as he said, Naho-chan, it's time you met the rest of my team. Practice Area 7. Naruto said, hey guys, to Sakura and Sasuke as they sat beneath a tree. Sakura and Sasuke both noticed the young girl playing with one of Naruto's tails as she stood next to him. Sakura thought it was adorable that Naruto had a tail wrapped around the girl's waist while she played with another, while Sasuke was wondering who the girl was. Ah, she's so cute! Sakura exclaimed as she approached the girl slowly and knelt down in front of her. Although Sakura beat him to it, Sasuke also got up and went to Naruto to find out what was happening. Sakura said sweetly, hi there and what's your name? Naho, said the girl quietly. Sakura said, nice to meet you Naho, I'm Sakura. Sasuke questioned, Naruto, who's the chibi and why is she here? When Naho yelled back, don't call me that, Sakura and Naruto burst out laughing at the playful tone. As she introduced the two, Naruto stuck her tongue out at Sasuke, causing him to grunt in return. This is Naho. Naho, this is Sasuke. He may seem like a great prick but once you get to know him is really just a softie on the inside, she said. Hit Naruto on the head, Sakura yelled, Oi baka, watch the language. Naruto rubs her head and closes one eye. Itai, I really wish you wouldn't do that Sakura-chan, you hit harder than you think, she said. Well don't curse in front of small children, you should know better than that, Sakura responded. So Naruto, why is she here? You got stuck with babysitting? Sakura inquired. For a few minutes, Naruto tickled Naho again and said, kind of. The daimyo wanted someone to show his daughter the life of a ninja and so chose me to do it. Naho will be with me for a week, he said, though at this rate doesn't seem like it's long enough. Sakura grinned at Naruto's playful behavior with Naho. Sasuke might as well have stopped to mentally recite that line. Not sure if he heard correctly, Sasuke said, wait hold up, she is the daughter of who exactly? I said she is the daimyo's daughter, you know the one that runs Hai no Kuni, Naruto continued. At this, Sakura and Sasuke both widened their eyes and looked from Naho to Naruto. First, recalling the few times they had to watch children at the orphanage, they see Naruto watching, something they didn't think was possible. He is currently watching the daughter of the daimyo. Since Naruto hasn't lied about anything yet, Sakura wasn't entirely convinced. Sasuke was preoccupied with the question of why Naruto was selected for the position, given that he was aware that there were more capable and secure ninjas in the village. Sasuke questioned, why did he choose you? Naruto responded, not entirely sure on that one. He said something about making the right choice though have no idea what he meant, to which Sasuke grunted himself. Kakashi, who appeared out of nowhere and startled Naho a little, said, and that is for the daimyo to know. I trust all is well Naruto? Naho continued reading his book. Naruto's sweet question, Kakashi.ni. Could you please kindly put that book away? Sent chills down the spines of Sasuke and Kakashi. Knowing that something would happen to him or the book if he didn't, Kakashi hastily hid the book. Yes, I see everything is fine, Kakashi said, laughing awkwardly as Sakura and Naruto watched him closely. Kakashi said, so let's go get our first mission for the day, as he began to make his way to the Hokage's office. When he heard someone cough, Kakashi swiftly took his hand out of his back pouch. Naruto asked Naho, Naho-chan, how would you like to have a ride back to the village? Naho nodded quickly and said, yes, and Naruto chuckled before transforming into a fox that was roughly half Sasuke's size. Naruto's shift caused Naho's eyes to widen. When Naruto lifted Naho by the tail and laid her on his back, Naho laughed. Sakura's perception of Naruto somewhat shifted since she didn't think she would get along well with kids. Sasuke was pondering the same things by himself. While Naruto ran circles around the team, sprinting occasionally, Naho laughed a lot on the way to the village. Naho reluctantly dismounted Naruto so she could turn around when Team 7 arrived at the village entrance. She picked up Naho and sat on Naruto's shoulders when Naruto turned around. Naho was a little embarrassed by the attention she received while perched on Naruto's shoulders on the way back. Sakura and Naruto both observed that Sasuke gave Naruto looks on the way to the Hokage's office, almost to the extent of appearing to watch him the entire time. Sakura was starting to feel a little envious of Sasuke's lack of interest. Over the course of the following 2 days, Team 7 completed numerous D-rank missions. Naho had inquired as to whether this was actually what ninjas did. She had anticipated manual labor, fighting, espionage, or other ninja-related activities. Even Sasuke joined his teammates in complaining and arguing with Kakashi after Naho said this. Being somewhat outnumbered, Kakashi told them that they had to handle it and that since he didn't create the system, they should speak with the person who did. Naturally, this led to the dispute in the Hokage's office. It would be an understatement to say the Hokage was not impressed. The Hokage had merely stated that they were too young to comprehend the purpose of these missions. That didn't sit well with Team 7, but they immediately remained silent when they were told they would have to continue doing D-rank missions for a year. Naruto put in a lot of effort during her evening training, first doing her regular strength and fitness exercises and then her fire seishitsu henka practice. After learning jutsus from Kurama, Naruto began to create her own jutsu, which uses her wind chakra to cover her entire body. After mastering her fire seishitsu henka training, she would try it with her fire chakra. Naruto began by encasing her feet in chakra, recalling that Kakashi had stated that the feet are the most difficult area to channel chakra. Naho's eyes glistened with wonder as Naruto made close to 1,000 with her bunshins. Naruto was only able to fully cover one or both of her arms or legs on the second day. It took a good deal more focus than she could currently manage. Naruto observed that her limbs moved much more quickly when she covered her arms and legs, and that everything she struck was utterly torn to pieces, leaving many trees with rather large holes in them. After she had calmed down from her training, Naruto was unsure whether she should go see Asuma or Kakashi for assistance with her case no Yoroi. Since Kakashi lives in the same house as Naruto, he chose to ask her first. Naruto sent Naho on her way to her temporary residence, giving her a ride on her back despite her apparent exhaustion. Around Kakashi's residence, Naruto saw Kakashi walking just ahead of her as she ascended the stairs to her home. "Kakashi! Sensei!" yelled Naruto. Kakashi, wondering who had called him, glanced down to see Naruto ascending the stairs while carrying Naho on her back. After hastily concealing his book, Kakashi paused to await Naruto. When Naruto finally caught up, Kakashi inquired, "Naruto, how was your training this evening?" "It went well. I can turn about half of that paper you gave me into ash, but there is something I am finding difficult to do," Naruto responded. "Well done, those bunshins really do increase the rate at which you learn things. So what is it you are finding difficult?" Kakashi was somewhat curious. The reason Naruto couldn't get it right was still a mystery to her. "Well, I am trying to completely cover my body with my wind chakra. I guess making it a wind of armor. But the problem is I can only either cover my entire arms or legs. I can't seem to get both," she said. Kakashi was impressed that Naruto was trying such a high level of jutsu. "Well, the K's no Yoroi isn't an easy jutsu. Only knew about 2 people who could cover their bodies with their chakra," he said. "And here I thought I was coming up with something new. I got the idea after hearing that Asuma can cover his blade in chakra, so I thought what would happen if I tried it on my body instead," Naruto said with a sense of disappointment. As he opened his door, Kakashi said, "Don't be too disappointed. It's quite impressive that you thought of it on your own. Why do you think you can't cover your entire body with chakra?" "To be honest, I think I lack the concentration. Other than that I don't know," Naruto said as he entered Kakashi's home. As Kakashi watched Naruto lay the sleeping Naho down on the couch, he remarked, "Concentration is a big part of all jutsus and what you are doing is called Keitai Henka." "Keitai Henka?" A bewildered Naruto inquired. "Yes, Keitai Henka. It's a very advanced form of chakra control which allows you to change your chakra's movement, form, size, range and purpose. The best way is to picture what you want the chakra to look like and how you release it," Kakashi clarified. Kakashi questioned, "Why do you think the symbol of Konoha is a leaf?" In an attempt to recall what Iruka Sensei had said, Naruto responded, "I recall Iruka Sensei saying something about how it helps with concentration." "Yes, it does. When you focus next time, focus only on the symbol on your headband," Kakashi replied. Kakashi nodded in response to Naruto's question. "Can I show you so you can see if there is anything I can improve?" Naruto performed the jutsu in precisely the same manner as before. From her shoulder to her hands, blue chakra enveloped her arms. It appeared as though a tornado was circling her arms due to the chakra's swirling motion. Using his Sharingan, Kakashi observed the chakra's flow as it swirled around her arms. Naruto turned off the jutsu after Kakashi nodded. Well done, Naruto. I can already see a few things that you can improve. The first is to try and make the radius in which your chakra flows around your arms tighter. This will help increase the speed at which it flows and will focus the jutsu more. The second thing is try to speed up the rotations as much as you can. Try to rotate it in anti-clockwise and see if it goes faster than clockwise, Kakashi said. Naruto questioned, why would the direction affect the speed? Because chakra in your body flows in a certain direction when you mold chakra, so rotating it in the same direction will allow it to flow easier, Kakashi explains. After taking in the information, Naruto thanked Naho and escorted her to her room. Naho wanted to sleep with Naruto, so the two of them shared a room. Naruto was more than willing to comply, and she covered them both with her tails. The following day, D-rank missions had to be endured by Team 7 for yet another day. Since nothing exciting had happened yet and the only way to get some excitement was to complete a C-rank mission, Naruto was growing bored and irritated. Naruto went in search of Asuma for advice on her Kase no Yoroi after completing her fitness and fire Seishitsu Henka training. She sought guidance on the Seishitsu Henka aspect of the jutsu after Kakashi had only assisted with the Keitai Henka portion. Naruto hoped that Asuma would be there as she ran to Training Ground 10 in fox form, carrying Naho on her back. She was aware that this might complicate her existing agreement, but she hoped it would be worthwhile. As they approached, Team Asuma heard laughter. A fox with a girl riding it was directly approaching them when they turned to look around. Uncertain of what to anticipate, Team Asuma tensed up a little. Asuma's comment, "Is that Naruto? Seems like she wants another tip," confused the genin. The fox skidded to a stop in front of them, gathering some dust before Ino could ask anything. After disappointing Naho, Naruto gradually transformed into a human. After roughly 7 seconds, Naruto appeared in front of Team Asuma, who were all staring at the ground except for Asuma. "So this is the famous shape shifting Kakashi told me about. It is really something to see in person," Asuma stated. Shikamaru muttered something about giving up on trying to understand Naruto and about troublesome blonde girls. Choji left it alone after realizing Shikamaru wouldn't even try to figure it out. In contrast, Ino wanted to know what the devil was happening. Ino said, "That is the weirdest henge no jutsu I have ever seen," saying, I am confused, really confused." When Naruto hurriedly said, "It's not a henge, it's shape shifting. There is a big difference, I will explain later, I don't have much time," Ino simply nodded, still perplexed. "So you want another tip on wind Seishitsu Henka?" asked Asuma. "Partly, I have already mastered the waterfall cutting exercise," said Naruto. Asuma grumbled, "Already? That took me months to do." Naruto grinned and remarked, "Cage buncheons really help," as Asuma groaned that it wasn't fair. "So Asuma Sensei, I started making a jutsu and wanted to know if you could see the jutsu and tell me if I can improve anything. Kakashi already gave me advice on Keitai Henka. I wanted to know if I can improve anything on the Seishitsu Henka level," Naruto said. "You are doing Keitai Henka training as well, just what the hell is Kakashi doing?" Asuma pondered. Asuma said, "All right, let's see this jutsu of yours." By following Kakashi's advice, Naruto was able to bring the chakra as close to her arms as possible. Additionally, she discovered that rotating her chakra counter clockwise, rather than clockwise, as she had previously done, allows her to do so more quickly. Additionally, she was able to rotate her chakra so quickly that it was hard to see her arm. Covering her arms, Naruto used the jutsu. Asuma was taken aback because he hadn't anticipated her using the Kase no Yoroi. Kase no Yoroi. Quite the difficult jutsu to master, but equally as deadly, Asuma stated. Asuma asked, "So what made you decide to use this jutsu?" "Well, when you said you coated your weapon with chakra, I wanted to see if I can do that with my body, as I don't use weapons," replied Naruto. When Asuma said, "You got the idea from that, not bad kid. Well, you know the deal," Naruto nodded back. Asuma pointed to a tree and said, "Okay, I want to see something. Go to that tree and slowly push your hand into it." Naruto approached the tree after giving a nod. Naruto made a fairly large hole with groove marks on the inside of the tree by slowly inserting her hand into it. Naruto was astounded by how much more successful it was after using the few Kakashi provided tips. Asuma nodded and glanced at the hole before peering inside. Naruto pondered Asuma's actions. Asuma walked toward Naruto and said, "There are 2 things I can tell you straight of the bat. The first is that the hole is much bigger than your arm. What you want is to make a hole the same size as your arm. This focuses the jutsu more, and the big hole shows that you are wasting chakra while using the jutsu. The smaller the hole you can make, the stronger the jutsu will be," Asuma clarified. As they walked back to the tree with Naruto, Asuma inquired, "The second thing, you see the groove marks?" Naruto nodded to Asuma after examining the groove marks inside the hole she had made. The gap between each groove rotation is quite wide. You should make the gap also as small as possible. This will increase the rotating speed and focus the jutsu a lot more, allowing you to lose less energy when coming into contact with any surface, Asuma went on. The whole point of wind is for it to be as thin and sharp as possible. Instead of making a fist leave your hand open so it makes your arm like a spear, it will be much more effective. That said, you can control piercing power of the jutsu, Asuma told Naruto. For a while, Naruto stood there in silence, contemplating and assimilating the new knowledge. Naruto said, "Thanks Asuma Sensei," before transforming into a fox, putting Naho on her back, and running away. Asuma told his team quite seriously, "If Naruto is already making jutsus like that, you guys have some serious competition." Ino exclaimed in surprise, "Wow, I never knew Naruto was so smart." Knowing that Naruto held back in the academy, Shikamaru remarked, "Both Choji and I knew. She was like me. We both held back during the academy, but by the looks of things Naruto more so than I." An arbitrary training area. Naruto practiced her new jutsu for 3 hours. Naruto had reduced the spaces between the groove marks and created a hole slightly larger than her arm with her bunchins. Because she didn't want to ruin the forest entirely, Naruto used the ground. Naruto had spent the last hour attempting to simultaneously cover her arms and legs. Her arms were completely covered, but she was only able to cover half of her legs. Naruto walked slowly back with Naho on her back and glanced back at the girl who was sleeping soundly. Naruto smiled and carried Naho back. Ninjas unexpectedly surrounded Naruto just before the village's entrance. Only their eyes were visible because the ninjas were entirely clothed in black. Just above their eyes, Naruto saw a symbol of a musical note on their masks. There were 8 of them, Naruto counted. Naruto tied Naho to her back with her tails, freeing one hand while continuing to hold Naho with the other. To find out if there were any more hiding in the surrounding forest, Naruto used her senses of smell and hearing. Naruto took a stance, glad they weren't. "Hand over the girl and we will let you live," the ninja declared before Naruto. "Fuck off, you aren't getting her," growled Naruto in response. The ninja responded, "Last warning bitch," with a more solemn tone. The ninja next to the first one said, "I won't turn you into my personal cock sleeve if you leave now." Naruto retorted, "You need a cock for that first. Now fuck off if you wish to live," growling as she shifted to her demon voice. Hearing the abrupt change in tone, the other ninjas had to suppress a laugh at the insult before assuming a stance. Naho was awakened by the Naruto's deeper and louder growl. When Naho noticed that Naruto and she were surrounded by ninjas, she became alarmed. Naruto channeled her chakra into her right arm, covering it completely, and consoled Naho, saying, "Don't worry Naho Chan, I will protect you. Close your eyes until I tell you to open them, this is going to get ugly." When the ninjas around her noticed this, they became vigilant and ready to attack. The ninja in front of Naruto were unprepared for what came next. The ninja was immediately killed when Naruto reappeared in front of them and thrust her arm into his chest. Naruto created 2 bunchins with a now bunchin on their backs and their right arms covered while utilizing the ninja's surprise state. The next ninjas closest to the bunchins were instantly killed when the 2 bunchins charged the ninjas on the side. Naruto instantly appeared to the ninja behind her after creating the bunchins, and she killed him in the same way. Her bunchins took care of another each by the time the man Naruto had killed had fallen. The 2 surviving ninjas witnessed 6 of them being killed almost immediately in a matter of seconds. The 2 ninjas tried to escape because they didn't want to stay. Before they could take more than a few steps, they were caught by the 2 bunchins. While Naruto had made 6 more bunchins to carry the remaining dead ninjas, the bunchins knocked out both of the ninjas. Every dead ninja had a hole where the heart should have been. When Naruto finally saw the aftermath, it was easy to see through the hole. Naruto ran to the Hokage's office with her bunchins. In order to avoid any civilians and to move more quickly, Naruto used the rooftops when she first arrived in the village. Naho held Naruto tightly and kept her eyes closed during all of this. Naruto softly tightened her hold on Naho and said, "Naho, you're safe now. You can open your eyes, but don't look back." Naho had been sobbing quietly out of fear of what might or could occur. Naruto had rubbed and soothed Naho with her tails after hearing her hiccup a few times. Naho said in a low voice, "Thank you Chan," and then dozed off on Naruto's back. Naruto grinned and accelerated toward the Hokage's office. "Hokage's workspace!" Naruto yelled, Gigi, as she entered the Hokage's office. Looking up, the Hokage saw 9 Narukos, 8 of whom were each carrying a ninja. The Hokage stood up and approached the Naruko who was holding Naho, asking, "Naruko, what happened?" "I was attacked, they were after Naho. Chan, 6 of them are dead while 2 are unconscious," Naruko responded. When the Hokage raised one of the ninja's heads, he could see the symbol on his forehead. He saw the symbol and swore silently. The Hokage told Naruko, "Auto ninja. Naruko, leave them here and head back home. Report this back to me tomorrow," as a number of Enbu showed up and captured the auto ninjas. After giving the Bunshins a nod, Naruko left for Kakashi's house. Neither Kakashi nor Naruko had been able to sleep, so it had been a long night. Kakashi had stayed up in case there were any more attacks. Aside from ensuring Naho had a good night's sleep, Naruko stayed up for the same reason. Although Naho slept soundly, she spent the entire night clinging to Naruko, and occasionally she would whimper softly. As a comforting and protective gesture, Naruko wrapped her tails around Naho. Naho had tightened her hold on Naruko each time she attempted to pull away. In the morning, Naruko woke up slowly and attempted to move, but she felt a slight hold. Naruko looked down to see Naho still holding onto her. At one point, Naruko realized she had dozed off. Naruko made a slow attempt to quietly get out of Naho's grasp. Naho didn't tighten her hold this time, but the movement startled her. Naho slowly opened her eyes to meet another pair of soft, blue eyes as she felt something soft and furry covering them. "Ohio, I apologize for waking you up there," Naruko said in a gentle and quiet greeting. Naho said, "Ohio," as she rubbed her eyes. Naruko said, "Looks like someone slept well, come on, got to get ready, there are a few things that need to be done," as she stood up and untangled Naho's tail. Naruko and Naho headed to the Hokage Tower after preparing Kakashi. The fact that Naho had not changed since the attack pleased Naruko. Still, Naruko would watch her carefully in case something happened. Naruko made a Bunshin to stay with Naho as they arrived at the door of the Hokage's office, and Kakashi followed suit. Naruko saw 2 individuals she didn't recognize when she walked in, but she could tell they were battle-hardened, and one of them appeared to be a Shikamaru Bunshin who was only a few years older. Because Naruko had visited Shikamaru's home a few times, she was already familiar with this person. From Naruko's perspective, the first person is on the left side of the table. This individual has somewhat darker skin. The Konoha symbol is emblazoned on his navy blue bandana. The black jacket he wore was open and hung down to his knees. He has on a gray shirt, pants, and black combat boots underneath. He has 2 scars on his face, one on his left side that begins just above but next to his eye and extends past his mouth before ending in the center, just before the tip of his chin. He has black eyes. Naruko didn't know where the second scar ended because the clothing covered the rest of it, but it began just below his right eye, very near his nose, and stretched in the same direction as the first. From Naruko's perspective, the second individual is positioned on the right side of the table. Her hair is worn up in a loose, fluffy ponytail, and her eyes are purple. When untied, her hair was fairly short, falling just past her neck, but it was long enough in the front to cover her headband. She's wearing a brown jacket that's a little longer than the first guy's. She is wearing mesh armor underneath, which appears to be a few sizes too small for her. In addition, she is dressed in shinobi sandals with a shin guard that falls just below her knees and a mesh pair of pants that reach her mid-thighs. Because the person was wearing a thick orange belt, Naruko was unable to determine whether the mesh suit was 1 piece or 2 pieces. In all honesty, Naruko thought the belt resembled a skirt designed for a 5-year-old. This woman's rather impressive figure was not concealed by her attire. Her well-proportioned body was demonstrated by her firm-looking E.cup breasts. You could see the slight 6-pack she was packing because the mesh was so tight on her. It also nicely accentuated her thighs, which flowed into the rest of her long, thin legs. The fact that the woman's mesh wasn't see-through like Shikamaru's left Naruko unsure of whether she was pleased or disappointed. Behind the desk beside the Hokage was Shikamaru's father, Shukaku. Apart from 2 scars on his right side, one above and one below his eye, Shukaku bore a striking resemblance to Shikamaru. In addition, he wore the standard Jonin uniform and had a beard. As he introduced the individuals in his office, the Hokage said, "Welcome Naruko. I would like to introduce to you Morino Ibiki and Mitarashi Anko. You already know Nara Shukaku. Naruko, well done on defending Naho yesterday. You handled yourself well. Due to you capturing not 1 but 2 of them alive, we were able to extract a fair bit of intel from them," the Hokage said with a smile. Anko looked closely at Naruko and remarked, "Is this really the kid? Doesn't look like much?" Anko went on to lick her lips and add, "But she does look rather delicious with that bod of hers." After being insulted and then complimented, Naruko wasn't sure how to respond. She was frightened by the compliment, though, because Anko's eyes were hungry. Anko, she may not look like much, but underestimating her will be the last thing you do. Hell, look at the ninjas she just took care of and don't forget about Zabuza, Kakashi said with a grin on her face. Anko responded by providing some information about the ninjas Naruko had faced the day before. That's the thing, she took down 6 of them and left 2 alive. We estimate that 3 of them were jonin while the rest were chunin. The ones that were killed in a clean hole in their chest the size of a fist, Anko said. Kakashi turned to Naruko and remarked, It seems like you have mastered that new jutsu of yours." "Jutsu?" inquired Anko inquisitively. To which Kakashi replied, "Kase no Yoroi." At this, Anko arched an eyebrow. Naruko nodded in response to Kakashi's nod, then focused and used the jutsu. Ibiki, Shukaku, and Anko all smirked as Naruko covered both of her arms, causing Anko to widen her eyes. When he saw Naruko use the jutsu, the Hokage grinned proudly. Naruko left the jutsu activated and remarked, with the help of Kakashi, "Sensei and Asuma. Sensei, I was able to improve and focus it, but I still can't cover my whole body with it yet." "So the Gaki has some potential," smirked Anko. Naruko questioned, "So must I report what happened yesterday?" In response, the Hokage looked at Anko, who merely rubbed the back of her head. Nopinochi saw what happened when he extracted the information, though it seems that Anko hasn't read the full report just yet, the Hokage said. The Hokage said, "Ibiki, tell her and Kakashi what you have learned so far." Ibiki nodded in agreement. "The ninja were from a new village called Otogakure no Sato but don't know who the Otokage or leader is supposed to be. They were sent to kidnap the girl as to why they weren't told. Though there was one thing that we did learn," Ibiki said. "Seems like they know little of what's happening within their own village, so what is it that you learned?" replied Kakashi. "Through the memories we've seen, they are preparing for war but not sure as to who it could be us. Also that a few were sent to spy on Sunagakure. We are unable to determine their goal at this stage, but we have sent a hawk to Sunagakure to warn about the spies," Ibiki recounted. "There are a few possibilities that they wish to achieve. One we know is that they are preparing for war. As to who, I think it is us. The attempted kidnapping of the girl was for leverage or a countermeasure should they attack us," Shukaku said. "They might also be trying to destroy the alliance between us and Kase no Kuni, either to stop reinforcements or getting them to attack us as well," Shukaku said. Kakashi nodded, comprehending the rationale, while Naruko only partially grasped the situation. For the most part, Naruko only realized that they could be attacked. The Hokage said, "For the time being, you are dismissed. Team 7 may have a break as a reward for the remainder of the week." Naruko walked over to Naho and gestured for her to get up, asking, "Kakashi, Sensei, what are we going to do now for the rest of the week?" Kakashi added, "We can't have you doing nothing, since Sakura knew Naruko and Sasuke would be using the time to train. Meeting time will be at 10 at the training ground where we will train," he said. Naruko decided to head to the training ground despite Kakashi's disappearance because they had an hour. Practice Area 7. After 45 minutes of playing with Naho, Naruko noticed Sasuke coming by himself. To relax and cool off, Naruko and Naho went to sit beneath a tree. Naruko noticed Sasuke approaching her with a determined expression. Sasuke said softly and blushingly, "Hey Naruko, could I speak to you quickly?" Naruko, who wasn't used to seeing Sasuke blush, assumed he was becoming ill. Naruko got up and went to the next tree with Sasuke. Naruko noticed that Sasuke was still blushing and twitching a little when they came to a stop. Naruko put a hand on Sasuke's forehead to check his temperature and said, "Oi, what's wrong? You look flushed and aren't acting like yourself." This caused Sasuke to blush a little more, which Naruko noticed and began to find confusing. Naruko asked again, becoming a little concerned, "Oi, you are heating up a bit, seriously, what's wrong?" Sasuke said, "Nothing is wrong, I just wanted to ask you something," with trepidation. Sasuke inhaled deeply and made an effort to relax before mumbling something that was too faint for Naruko to hear. Naruko, who couldn't hear anything, said, "Sasuke, I can't hear you, need to turn up the volume." Sasuke took another deep breath before saying, "I asked if you would like to go out with me." This time, he was a little more confident and determined. Did Naruko hear correctly? She froze. Sasuke was unable to decipher Naruko's bewildered expression while she was wearing it. After failing to comprehend what she had heard for a few minutes, Naruto's only response was, huh. Although he wasn't sure if he had done something incorrectly, Sasuke sighed and continued on. Sasuke calmly asked again, would you like to go out with me sometime? Like a date? You know, just you and me, although his nervousness was still evident. When Naruto saw that it was coming from Sasuke of all people, her eyes widened. Sasuke had never once challenged her since they were a team. He did appear more approachable and receptive to her, but Naruto assumed that was just his attempt to fit in with the team. Naruto reddened deeply. She had just received a romantic proposal. Sasuke was a little uneasy about the silence because he thought Naruto would decline. He asked me out just now. A date, a real date. This is unbelievable, but why me? Naruto noticed that the color of her blush was getting deeper. Why me? Asked Naruto quietly, unsure of his motivation. Many reasons. You are one of the few that don't hoard me like some fangirl. You were the only one who acted like I was a normal person, not some high and mighty Uchiha. You were also the only one who gave me their time when I was at my lowest after I had lost everything, replied Sasuke. The spars that we had were some of the best times I ever had. And then we were put on the same team. The time I have spent with my team, with you, is the happiest time I've had since then. After seeing you with Naho the past few days, something sparked and attracted me to you, Sasuke went on. Sasuke continued to blush as he said, despite everything you've been through, you're beautiful, strong, and caring. You are the one I see myself with. Sasuke, you. I like you, Naruto really like, just thinking about not being able to be with you makes me feel empty. The small things that you have done really grew on me, Sasuke said with a smile on his face. Naruto said, that means so much to me, I am extremely happy, but Sasuke, if the villages find out I don't what they would do to you. I'm sorry Sasuke, I can't, won't put you thought that, with a tear streaming down her cheek. I don't care, they can hate me all they want, but as long as I am with you none of that matters. Nothing else matters, not what you are or the reason this village despises you. Sasuke responded with equal resolve. Naruto's eyes widened as she heard and saw that Sasuke had meant what he had said. Another tear trickled down Naruto's cheek as she looked down, shielding her eyes. Naruto never imagined that she would be so joyful, and what Sasuke said had truly struck her at the right moment. Please go out with me, Naruto, Sasuke repeated. According to Sasuke, Naruto's smile was so lovely that it caused him to blush quite a bit. With a playful tick of her tongue, Naruto asked, so the high and mighty Sasuke can blush and not be a complete brood. So when is the date? Before Sasuke realized what Naruto had just said, he shot back, hey, this isn't easy for me, yo. Wait, does that mean? Yes, it does. I am more than happy to say yes, Naruto answered quietly, blushing slightly. Sasuke repeated that sentence several times in his mind, feeling as though he was on cloud 9. Naruto could see that his once dead eyes were now alive again. Sasuke was wearing them now for everyone to see, and Naruto had no idea how he had concealed his feelings. Naruto turned to Naho and said, you let me know when the date is, though this week is not really a good idea. Sasuke said, yeah sure, just make sure you keep next week open then, upon seeing Naho. When Sasuke sensed something pressing against his chest, he stopped moving. Sasuke looked down and saw Naruto's tail. Confused, he turned to look at Naruto. Naruto gave a quiet, thank you, Sasuke-kun, and then she let her tail drop. Sasuke noticed Naruto's genuine, gentle smile as a tear streamed down her cheek. Before they went to the tree where Naho was sitting with Naruto, Sasuke returned a small smile and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. The two were unaware that Kakashi had witnessed the entire event and was pleased with his team. Soon after Sasuke and Naruto took their seats, Sakura arrived. Kakashi wore a mask that revealed an evil smirk as he poofed into view in front of them. Team 7 was a little alarmed by this. Yo, said Kakashi. Kakashi grinned broadly and said, thanks to Naruto last night, we have been granted a small break till the end of the week, so you know what that means. Naruto, not that I am ungrateful, but what did you do? Sakura inquired. She was attacked by ninjas last night and did well by killing 6 of them while capturing the last 2, Kakashi wrote in response on Naruto's behalf. Sasuke wanted to know, you were what? Sakura arched an eyebrow in response to Sasuke's tirade. With a slight smirk, Naruto said, I was attacked, but it wasn't a big deal. They dropped before they realized what had happened. Don't downplay yourself, Naruto, but at the same time don't get too cocky, it will be your downfall, Kakashi said with seriousness. Naruto answered, hi Kakashi. Sensei, in return. Kakashi said, So get to it, you know the drill by now, and the genin trio began their strength and fitness training on the nearby river. After 2 hours, Team 7 proceeded with their chakra control exercises, but this time they were also on the water and being pursued by Kakashi or his dog pack. Naho watched all three eventually get devoured by dogs, which made her laugh. After that, they spent the day practicing their seishitsu henka as usual. While Sasuke was about to roll that blasted paper, as Sasuke had called it, into a ball, Sakura managed to submerge a log half her size in water. A rock the size of her hand had been reduced to ash by Naruto's buncheons approximately 3 hours later. Given the last time she had heard Naruto cheer, Sakura sighed as she realized what her cheering meant. Meanwhile, Sasuke turned the paper into a ball without realizing it, using it as motivation. With a sly smile, Sasuke tried again, but the outcome was the same. Sasuke had accompanied Naruto in obtaining the details of their upcoming training. So it looks like you've mastered lightning while Naruto mastered fire. Well done you two, spoke Kakashi in a flattering tone. So what now, Kakashi? Sensei, do I start with lightning as well? Asked Naruto. You will, but not during these training sessions. You will have to do it in your own time. Also ask Sasuke for the details and any tips you might need, replied Kakashi. Naruto said, oh okay, so what do I do now? She was glad to have the extra time to spend with Sasuke, but she was a little bummed that she couldn't begin her lightning seishitsu henka training. Kakashi said, Naruto, you will practice your Kase no Yoroi, to which Naruto grinned broadly before leaving. Sasuke grinned at Kakashi's statement. Sasuke, since you obtained your Sharingan during the wave mission, I will be teaching you my own original jutsu. Team 7 trained diligently for the next 3 hours. Sakura was attempting to apply water to a log the size of herself, while Kakashi was teaching Sasuke his own unique jutsu. Naruto used 1,000 buncheons to finish her Kase no Yoroi. Sakura had only covered slightly more than half of the log by the end of the day. Now that she could fully cover her arms and legs at the same time, Naruto was overjoyed and began working on covering her tails as well. There were 5 tails, and Naruto could only cover half of them. Sasuke was able to learn the jutsu's jokes and memorize the hand signals. After continuing to practice her Kase no Yoroi no Jutsu, Naruto stayed for an additional hour after Kakashi dismissed them. Since there were no additional events planned for the remainder of the week, Team 7 could train without interruption, and Naruto was simply relieved that no one else attempted to kidnap Naho. At last, Sakura had finished her training in seishitsu henka. Naruto had covered her arms, legs, and even her tails. Despite the weight on her limbs, Naruto felt as though she could move them more easily and with less effort. Sasuke had succeeded in activating the jutsu, but it took him some time and he was unable to maintain it. Naruto had been with Naho most of her free time. When Naho began to exhibit symptoms of a ramen addiction, they went to ramen ichiraka every night for super. However, after more than a week without hunting, Naruto realized that she was also partially addicted to meat. Sasuke's challenges to a spar every day since he had asked Naruto out were one thing that began to recur. Sasuke got his ass handed to him several times as Naruto resisted but went fairly hard. Naruto deliberately pushed him to improve his reflexes and taijutsu strength. When Sasuke got tired and couldn't keep up with Naruto, he lost the last challenge, despite holding his own fairly well. For the first time, Naruto saw that Sasuke was grinning during their spar rather than pouting or becoming upset over his constant defeats. Naruto spent her time in the seal training with Kurama, practicing Kaden and Futon jutsus, during her alleged sleep time. The majority of the jutsus that Naruto learned were wide area destruction jutsus, with a few that were single target but heavily focused on just one target. After studying some jutsus with Kurama, Naruto found that she liked taijutsu more than ninjutsu and that it was a much better fit for her, since she would find it difficult to reach ninjas who employed long-range attacks if she concentrated only on one. Kurama advised her to continue practicing ninjutsu for when she needed mid- to long-range attacks. Additionally, Kurama advised her to quickly take advantage of the fact that most genins, chunins, and some jonins only concentrate on one area, leaving them vulnerable to taijutsu or long-range attacks. Hokage's office the following day, too. Sama, Naho exclaimed as she rushed to embrace her dad. The daimyo gave his daughter a firm embrace in return and said, Naho-chan, I missed you so much. The daimyo asked, letting go of Naho, so did you have fun and learn a lot? It was the most amazing time ever. Naruto.ne-chan is the best, Naho joyfully answered. After hearing what Naho called Naruto, the daimyo playfully teased her, saying, Ne-chan, hope you didn't steal her away from me. Hee hee hee, I think I may have. Naruko laughed and rubbed the back of her head in response. I thank you. It seems that Naho-chan really enjoyed her time with you. I also heard that you protected her rather well, he said. Hi, and it was an honor, daimyo, Naruko said, concluding with a small bow. When daimyo said, I might just have to let her visit you again sometime. Well, we need to get going. Naho rushed and gave Naruko a hug because she didn't want to leave just yet. Nay-chan, Naho said, her eyes welling with tears. Now, this isn't goodbye, Naho-chan. Be good and make sure to visit soon, Naruko said quietly as she knelt down and gave Naho a hug. Naho gave a nod, then grudgingly released his grip and ran closer to her. Naho returned Naruko's wave before heading out the door. Naruko returned to her house slowly. After gathering her belongings from Kakashi's house, she went back to her own house now that she was by herself. Naruko lamented, it's really quiet, too quiet, as she lay face up on her bed, already missing the companionship. After considering asking Kakashi if she could live there permanently, Naruko fell asleep rather quickly. The morning of the following day, as she slowly prepared for the day, Naruko continued to reflect on her time spent with Naho. Sasuke was waiting at the bottom of the stairs leading to Naruko's apartment when she left her house to go hunting. Naruko questioned, perplexed as to why Sasuke was present. Sasuke-kun. What are you doing here? Sasuke blushed slightly and said, Hey Naruko, I thought I would walk with you to the training grounds. You do now, there are still 3 hours till then and I going hunting this morning, though you welcome to join, Naruko responded. Sasuke jumped in line with Naruko and said, Ah, I see, sure I would love to join, maybe you can teach me a thing or two about hunting, as they made their way to the outskirts of the village. Naruko said joyfully, Sure, I'll teach you what I know. Don't expect to get it the first time, before becoming somewhat somber. Naruko went on, You could assist me with my lightning seishitsu henka training in exchange. Although he wasn't entirely sure what he should help with at the moment, Sasuke responded, Sure, though I was going to do that anyway, so I will think of something else to help you with instead. Naruko responded by complimenting her eyes for the first part before considering what else she would require assistance with. Ah, that's very nice of you, but I am looking for any taijutsu styles if you know of any or anyone, she said. Sasuke tried to think of other fighting techniques and said, Well, I could teach you my interceptor style, but it does rely heavily on the use of the Sharingan, but your eyes might be able to make up for it. Sasuke went on, As for teachers, I am afraid you would have to ask Kakashi, though I could look in the Uchiha library to see if they have recorded any styles, since his clan library has a lot of recorded materials. You would share your library with me? Asked Naruko, who was both happy and surprised. Sasuke nodded and said, Yeah, I would. Perhaps you could help me with some of it as well. The final words, Thank you Sasuke-kun, though I wish I had a library like that, were a little depressing for Naruko. Sasuke assured her, Be sure to ace the chunin exams because you never know, you might just have. Oh, I will ace it and you better as well, and let's just say if you don't you will be regretting it, Naruko grinned. Sasuke retorted, You're on. You better ace it if you know what's good for you, as he accepted the challenge. Naruko spent the next 2 hours teaching Sasuke her hunting knowledge. Since tracking was the most crucial component, Naruko gave it a lot of attention. Naruko showed Sasuke how to use the footprints left behind to determine the direction, kind of animal, and potential age. After they captured and killed the deer, Sasuke also learned where to aim for the fastest kill without causing too much damage to the fur. He also learned the proper technique for cleaning and skinning the catch. Fortunately, his stomach could handle it. In order to ensure that the catch was totally drained of its blood, he also discovered that it is best to let it drain for 2 to 3 days, depending on its size. This makes it easier to cut the meat and fur into clean pieces that can be sold as pelts. When the catch was ready for it, Naruko promised to teach Sasuke the best cuts. Naruko was a little astounded by how quickly Sasuke processed everything. They arrived at the training ground an hour early. They all tried to turn the leaf into a ball after Naruko made 2,000 bunchins. When Naruko first began training in Seishitsu Henka, she was aware that she could manage 2,000 bunchins because her chakra capacity was significantly greater. In the initial attempts, Naruko either shredded the leaf into 1,000,000 pieces or turned it to ash. After several attempts, she finally succeeded in getting the leaf to wrinkle, but it would soon shred or turn to ash. Before Naruko could ask Sasuke for a tip, Sakura showed up and inquired as to who was Naruko. Sakura said, Hey guys, so which one is the real Naruko? Before posing the question. I am, Naruko said, rising from the Naruko's sea. Naruko grinned and asked, Or am I? Sakura, not particularly in the mood for one of Naruko's games, said, "Naruko, I just want to ask you something, so which is the real you?" "One of us," in a monotone, all the Narukos said. "Come on Naruko please," Sakura said whinily. Kakashi said, "Yo," coming out of nowhere but being taken by surprise by all the Narukos. "Kakashi, can you please help me fish out the real Naruko?" asked Sakura. "Naruko, come here so we can start the day. You can leave the bunchins to carry on for the day while we do missions. Remember to dispel them every half hour now that you have doubled the amount you were using," instructed Kakashi. The Naruko nearest to them said, "Hi," and got to his feet. As Team 7 began to move to gather their daily missions, Naruko turned to Sakura and asked, "So what did you want to ask me?" "It's not really important, and I kind of want to ask when we are alone," Sakura said quietly. "I'll ask later." Naruko nodded after raising an eyebrow in reply. "Hokage office. So I have a short C-rank mission for you. You're to deliver this package to Keisha. The client will be waiting at the entrance of the city. He also wanted it there soon, so you will have to move quickly," the Hokage told Team 7 about the assignment. The Hokage nodded when Sakura questioned, "Keisha the capital?" Sakura exclaimed, "Yay, I can't wait to see the capital," with excitement. "We are not going there for sightseeing, we are only going to the entrance before coming back," Kakashi stated. Sakura sighed after pouting. She was eager to visit the capital. She had heard great things about the stores there, and the variety is unmatched in the elemental countries. They only ran into bandits once during the relatively easy journey to and from the capital. Not wanting to find out if the rumors about Kakashi were true, the bandits all ran away as soon as a few of them recognized him. Sakura did learn one thing from the trip. Sasuke appeared to be much closer to Naruko, or anyone, really. The thing that baffled her the most was Sasuke's constant smile while speaking to Naruko. Additionally, Naruko began appending the kun suffix to Sasuke's name. Sakura was disappointed that neither of them was paying any attention to her, but she was also very envious. Before confronting them, she would observe if this persisted a few times. As Sakura watched the two engage with one another, she felt strangely alone. Kakashi was not unaware of this. With a sigh, Kakashi hoped the team wouldn't be torn apart. They were instructed to promptly report to the Hokage's office upon their return. The reason behind their increased speed is unknown. At the Hokage office again, the Hokage declared, "This next mission is of high importance. You must not fail this mission no matter the cost," as soon as Team 7 stepped inside. "I am not sure why you must find this out, but Team 7 has been requested, more specifically you Naruko have been requested," the Hokage continued with seriousness. With the exception of Naruko, who was a little anxious, everyone on Team 7 became quite interested. This time, who asked for her, and why? Who would want her if she was just an orphan who was despised by the village? How did people find out about her? Nervously, Naruko said, "Me? Why me?" The Hokage sighed after saying, "I told you that you must find out, as for who?" When the Hokage finally said, "The kazekage of Sunagakure no Sato." "Huh? You have been requested by the Yondaime kazekage of Sunagakure no Sato. Your mission is to report to him and escort him to Konohagakure along with an additional team from Sunagakure," the Hokage responded. Sasuke said, "Wait, why do we have to escort him here?" "He didn't say just that he requested Naruko along with the rest of Team 7, the Hokage responded. Kakashi inquired, "How soon must we be there?" "He didn't give a date or time, but I would like you to leave now and get there as soon as possible," replied the Hokage. Kakashi said, "Hi," bowing. Kakashi said, "Team 7 report by the west gate in 1 hour," and then vanished in a whirlpool of leaves. Naruko wasn't sure what to anticipate this time, so Team 7 went to prepare. With the new moon in 5 days, Naruko hoped nothing untoward would occur. When she reported back to the west gate, she reminded her team. Around Naruko's residence, Naruko saw Sasuke waiting for her once more as she descended the stairs. When Naruko noticed him waiting there, leaning against the gate, his hands in his pockets, she grinned. Naruko said, "Ohio Sasuke-kun," with joy. "Ohio, Naru-chan," Sasuke said, grinning slightly. Hearing the chan, Naruko flushed. The two set off in the direction of the west gate. Naruko, who was excited for her date this week, said quietly, "I apologize for not being able to keep this week open." "No big deal, and it's only the start of the week. I am sure that there will still be time," replied Sasuke. "Besides, it's not like we could have predicted this," Sasuke went on. "No kidding, this is the last thing I expected to happen. Even last week was a shock, though it was a welcomed one," Naruko said. When Naruko and Sasuke reached the gate, Sakura and Kakashi were already there. Sakura didn't seem very happy, Naruto noticed. Naruto approached Sakura, who was staring at the ground, out of concern. Naruto placed a hand on Sakura and cocked her head to the side, asking, "Hey Sakura, are you okay? You seem depressed." Sakura said, "Yeah, it's nothing, I'm fine," as she raised her head to face Naruto. Naruto said, "If you say so, you know you can talk to me about anything," with a slight smile. "Yeah, thank you," Sakura purportedly smiled. Kakashi said, "Right, listen up," to get his team's attention. "We will be going a bit faster than what we would normally be travel at. Even at this pace it will take 2 days to reach Sunagakure. By the end of the day I would like to be at the border," Kakashi stated with seriousness. Kakashi said, "Head out," establishing the tempo. The other members of the team trailed behind, maintaining an arrowhead formation. In line with each other are Kakashi in front, Sakura slightly to his left, Naruto directly behind him, and Sasuke to his right. Kakashi thought his team was impressive. Although it was already half past the hour, Sakura was still going strong and showed no signs of slowing down, which gave Kakashi the impression that she might find it difficult to keep up. In times of need, Kakashi had established the standard speed for Jonin travel. Kakashi was aware that they would arrive somewhat earlier than he had anticipated at this rate. Since a summons from any cage should be responded to immediately, Kakashi used this speed to get to Suna as soon as possible. Later that night, bringing his team to a stop, Kakashi said, "We will set up camp here. Sasuke and I will get the firewood. You two can set up the tents," before giving the order. In order to gather firewood, Sasuke and Kakashi went into the forest. The camp was set up in a minute thanks to Naruto's bunshins. Sitting next to Sakura, Naruto could still see that she was depressed and thinking deeply. Naruto worriedly said, "Hey Sakura, what's wrong? You were distracted the entire way here and even now." Sakura lied while pretending to smile. "Oh, it's nothing, I'm fine," she said. Naruto refused to let this go, saying, "Come Sakura, it's not nothing. I can tell when a smile is fake, trust me, I know." "I said it's not." Sakura was interrupted by Naruto, who shot back, "Sakura, tell me, there is definitely something." Sakura sighed. This was not something she wanted to discuss just yet. "Naruto, be honest with me. Is there anything going on with you and Sasuke?" Sakura inquired. Sakura was out of Naruto's line of sight. Although she was aware of Sakura's strong feelings for Sasuke, she also knew that Sasuke had no interest in Sakura. Naruto detested lying, and he had no intention of doing so now. "Maybe I'm not sure yet," Sakura exploded, not pleased at all with Naruto's response. "What do you mean you not sure? I saw Sasuke waiting for you at your house for the past 2 days, and the past few days Sasuke has been smiling, especially when around you," Sakura said. Naruto responded, "You never let me finish," a little louder. Naruto continued, preventing Sakura from interrupting him. "Like I said, I don't know yet. He asked me out last week but we haven't had the date yet. I'm also wanting to take this slow, Sakura. This is very new to me. Look, I seem to have feelings for him but I don't what they are just yet," Naruto said. Sakura said quietly, "He asked you out?" Naruto said, "Sorry, Sakura. He asked me out last week. I don't like lying or keeping secrets, so yes, he did." Naruto was a little alarmed and afraid because she was unsure of Sakura's reaction. Ever since the beginning of the mission to Nami no Kuni, she and Sakura have been fairly close. Tearing her friendship with Sakura apart, as Ino and Sakura did, was the last thing she wanted to do. Naruto initially found it difficult to comprehend Sakura and Ino's animosity toward one another. She knew she partially understood why liking the same boy would do that, but she didn't know why. With a quiet, "I see, well I hope you two are happy together," Sakura rose and made her way to her tent. "Sakura, I don't know what to do or say, and the last thing I want is this to create a wall between us. I've seen what happened to you and Ino, I just want," Naruto said but wasn't able to finish. "Naruto, it's fine, really. It just hit me harder than I expected. I always partly knew that Sasuke might fall for you if he ever did fall for anyone," Sakura said with her back to Naruto. "I mean, why wouldn't he? You're beautiful, strong, funny, a genius when you want to be, pretty much everything a guy would want. I'm sure if I was a guy the first would fall for you, I on the other hand." Sakura's final sentence was interrupted by Naruto. Sakura was about to say something, but Naruto rushed over and jerked her, forcing her to turn to face her. When Sakura learned that Sasuke had asked Naruto out, she was already on the edge of tears. As Sakura was pulled into a tight embrace by Naruto, she nearly jumped when he jerked her around. "Sakura, please don't ever say what you were going to say. Please don't ever say it again, Naruko said, her embrace becoming more intense. Sakura, you are beautiful, strong and smart, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't ever compare yourself to someone else. You are you and don't ever sell yourself short, Naruko went on. But I feel useless with you two here. I mean both you and Sasuke can handle yourselves. I'm just always staring at your backs. You two have left me behind. I can't come anywhere near to comparing to you, Sakura responded. Naruko pulled back, keeping her hands on Sakura's shoulders and staring into her eyes. Sakura, Sasuke and I train hard all the time. It's the only thing we can do, and know what to do in our spare time, she said. Sakura's red eyes and flushed cheeks with a few tears streaming down them were visible to Naruko. Sakura's face was wet, and Naruko wiped it away with her tail. Naruko added with a slight smile, Sakura, if you feel behind, just tell us and we will help you catch up. That's what teammates and friends are for. All you need to do is ask and we will be there. Naruko whispered, you don't need to say anything, I will always be there for you, and he pulled Sakura back into his embrace. Sakura returned the hug with the words, thank you, Naruko. I hope it works out with you and Sasuke. When Kakashi and Sasuke returned, they both noticed Naruko and Sakura embracing. Sasuke was a little intrigued, but Kakashi had a suspicion as to what it was. Kakashi had hoped that Sakura and Naruko would stay close, and it appears that they would. In a strange but cozy silence, Team 7 ate their dinner. About halfway through her meal, Naruko stopped to look at her team. Kakashi sits across from her, on the opposite side of the fire. He is reading his book again after finishing his meal, though Naruko is still unsure which he is reading. Sakura, who was seated fairly close to Naruko, was to her left. While Sakura was eating, Naruko noticed a tiny smile on her face. Sasuke was seated directly next to her right, and he was eating. Naruko was staring directly into Sasuke's eyes when he stopped eating. The way Naruko was staring at him made Sasuke blush a little. Uncertain of why Naruko was staring at him that way, Sasuke said, Naruko? Something wrong? Naruko smiled softly and said, No, nothing is wrong, nothing at all, before resuming her meal. Sasuke simply shrugged and continued to eat. Kakashi grinned broadly from behind his book, pleased that his team was growing closer every day. As he stood up, Kakashi declared, I'll take the first watch, Sasuke second, Sakura then Naruko. After nodding, the three genin finished eating and went to bed. Sakura led Naruko inside their tent. Sakura was already in her sleeping bag, lying on her back, when Naruko turned around to close the flap after entering. After transforming into a tiny fox, Naruko cuddled up to Sakura. Something warm and fuzzy was pushing itself up beside Sakura. Sakura grinned as she looked down, then turned over on her side, embraced Naruko, and dozed off. The morning of the following day, Kakashi hastily assembled his team and prepared the camp for the protracted trek across the desert. With a solemn tone, Kakashi spoke, Listen up, the rest of the way is a harsh desert. Keep yourselves hydrated. The desert isn't anything like what you have traveled across. Put these on, you will need them, before flinging cloaks at his teammates and donning one himself. Sakura, Sasuke, and Naruko all put on their cloaks. Naruko observed that the cloak was white and incredibly light. Naruko covered her eyes with the mask and hood that were fastened to the cloak. Naruko turned to face her teammates, who were also only able to see their eyes. Kakashi commanded, head out, as he left and resumed setting the pace. Fortunately, despite the extreme heat, the trip across the desert was uneventful. Naruko's situation was worse than that of her teammates. Because of her innate warmth, she can live contentedly in extremely cold environments. This place is hot, not made for this place. Kakashi, how much longer? Naruko sighed. Kakashi answered, just be patient for the time being. We are out for about 2 hours. Despite the heat, Kakashi and the rest of his team managed to survive. Suddenly, Naruko found himself completely soaked in water. Naruko yelled, what the? As she was unprepared for the water to be thrown at her. Hopefully that helps, Sakura smiled. Sakura was holding her hands in the Tori hand seal when Naruko turned to her left. Sakura, did you? Sakura said, yip, while twitching her tongue. Naruko said, I'm not sure whether to thank you or get you back, her eye twitching slightly. Shortly after, Naruko said, thanks, but I am cooler now. Naruko remarked, Kakashi, before I forget again, it's new moon in less than 4 days, keeping in mind that the new moon was approaching. I see, well we'll see what the kazekage wants then decide what to do, Kakashi replied. Kakashi wanted to know all the details before making a choice, so he asked, "We know that you became human and will be weaker, but will you still be able to fight or travel?" "Don't know, it hasn't been new moon yet since this came into play, though I imagine I will feel quite weak and drained like one normally feels when they suffer from chakra exhaustion," Naruko responded as best as she could. Still awaiting the final piece of information, Kakashi remarked, "Makes sense. Well, like I said, we will find out what we will do when we get there." Sanagakure entrance. The massive wall in front of Naruko made her exclaim, "Wow, look at this wall, it's huge," in awe. Similar to Konoha, the wall encircles Suna. The wall has steps on the outside and resembles a portion of a dome. There are roughly 7 steps total, and each one is fairly large. Each step appeared to be sufficiently wide to allow 1 or possibly 2 people to pass between the edge and the beginning of the subsequent step. A guard's voice interrupted Naruko's admiration of the wall. "Halt! State your identity and business," a guard said in an attempt to scare Team 7. "Kakashi of Konoha, leader of Team 7, Naruko, Sakura, and Sasuke. The kazekage is expecting us," Kakashi declared, ignoring the threats. The guard heard their reason for being here and said, "Please wait while we confirm," in response. Team 7 was 10 minutes late when they noticed someone come out of the steps leading to the village. The individual was a man slightly taller than Kakashi. His short hair, which appeared to have been unbrushed, was reddish brown. His black eyes were cold and harsh, and they were fixed on Team 7. He has on black shinobi sandals and a black doji. What is somewhat unusual is that, unlike most people, he was not wearing a belt with his doji. "I am the Yondaime kazekage. Please follow me to my office," the kazekage said in a somewhat deep voice. "Welcome to Sanagakure, Kakashi, Naruko." Kakashi bowed and said, "Thank you, kazekage." Sama and his team followed suit. The kazekage said, "Please, kazekage or Yondaime is fine," as he made his way to his office. Office of kazekage. The room resembled the hokage's office quite a bit, except that there were only cushions instead of a table. Team 7 knelt on the cushions, Sakura beside Sasuke and Naruko between Kakashi and Sasuke, as the kazekage and Kakashi had done. The kazekage got right to the point, saying, "I trust the Hokage briefed you of what is required for this mission." Kakashi answered, "Hi, though could you please elaborate as to why we will be escorting you," before following up with his query. "You along with one of my teams will be escorting me to Konoha for the approaching chunin exams." A smirk spread across Naruko and Sasuke upon learning that the chunin exams were approaching. The reason for this? First, the warning of spies that you warned us of has led us to learn that my life is supposed to be taken on my trip to Konoha, the kazekage replied. "We don't know why or who will be attacking. I maybe be strong but I can't be too careful. The second reason why will be two-part reason, the first being that we wish to show that we will not forsake our alliance with Hai no Kuni. The second being that I wish to improve our alliance with Hai no Kuni in the hopes that the current alliance agreement will change for the better," the kazekage said, revealing his lengthy explanation. In the hopes of receiving an answer, Kakashi said, "Hi, I understand, though I also would like to know why you requested our team, more specifically Naruko." Toward the end of his response, kazekage became dejected. "Apart from her slow-growing reputation, I was hoping that being who she is she could help my son," he said. "Reputation?" Naruko inquired, more concerned about that than the final justification for her request. "Why, yes. A fresh genin, freeing a country from the clutches of an infamous criminal lord, besting one of the Kiri no Shinobigatana Shichinin Shu tends to spread quickly, and defending the daughter of the Hai no Kuni daimyo also adds fuel to the already burning fire," the kazekage replied to Naruko. Hearing her rising fame, Naruko rubbed the back of her head and laughed awkwardly. The kazekage went on, "But your appearance also spreads it quite quickly." "My appearance?" inquired Naruko, unsure of how to react to this. After examining her other features, the kazekage remarked, "It's not every day that we see a human figure with tails and ears on the top of their head." Still unsure of how to handle this, Naruko looked down. She does not wish for anyone outside of her village to believe that she is a monster or a freak. When Sasuke saw this, he placed a comforting hand on Naruko's shoulder and squeezed it lightly. Naruko gave Sasuke a quick glance before grinning back. Kakashi had a good idea of what he meant when he said, "While Naruko seems more concerned with her reputation, could you explain what you mean by her helping your son, more so of what you mean who she is?" "My son is just like Naruko, kazekage began, but Kakashi interrupted him. "You know what I mean by this." Not sure as to know why you know that, but there is a law in our village that states that this fact can only be revealed by Naruto herself once she has participated in the chunin exams at least once. In a tone that startled Team 7, Kakashi stated firmly, even though we are not in our village right now, I still wish to withhold this by letting Naruto reveal this on her own terms and when she is ready. This time, the kazekage let Kakashi's tone slip. I apologize, I didn't know, though I would advise you to watch your tone. As to how I know, it's not exactly hard to figure out, he said. Kakashi felt he didn't need to apologize for his tone, so he didn't. Although the other members of Team 7 were now very interested, they chose not to ask since they knew Naruto would inform them when he felt ready. On the other hand, Naruto was unhappy and covered her eyes as she looked down. The kazekage compared her to his son, and Naruto understood exactly what he meant. Sakura and Sasuke raised an eyebrow in response to Naruto's question, "Why did you do it?" which was whispered but loud enough for everyone to hear. The kazekage responded, "It needed to be done, we were desperate at the time," to part of the question. Naruto stood up and asked, "Desperate for what? Power? Revenge? Greed? What would drive you to do that?" Her voice growing louder with each word. Kakashi yelled, "Naruto," as he attempted to yank her hand back down. After releasing herself from Kakashi's grasp, Naruto approached the kazekage and cast a disdainful glance at him. The kazekage looked up and glared at Naruto. "I don't need to answer you or defend myself, I know what I have done and the consequences of my decision," he said. "No you don't, you have no idea what it's like. You have no idea what it's like, living like that is a pure hell. You only have yourselves to blame, not your son, not them, not anyone else, only yourselves," Naruto replied with a glare. Kakashi's harsh words, "Naruto enough," caused Sakura and Sasuke to wince. Naruto yelled back, "Shut up," without even turning to face Kakashi. Without giving Kakashi a chance to respond, Naruto said, "If you greedy humans had only left them alone, none of this would have happened. Now generations of kids have to suffer the consequences because of your decision. Your own son has to suffer the consequences." Naruto made his way to the door, but paused before opening it. Naruto looked back at the kazekage and said, "I will do this for one reason and one reason only. For his sake, no one else," before slamming the door shut and heading out. Sakura and Sasuke were taken aback by Naruto's behavior. They were aware that it was a sensitive topic, but they were unaware of how bad it was. Sakura had changed her mind about wanting to know what it was all about. As he ran out after Naruto, Sasuke pondered deeply what this was about. With a low bow, Kakashi said, "I apologize for Naruto's behavior. I will speak with her after this. No, she is right, we only have ourselves to blame. This is something I deeply regret. I lost a son and my wife. She is even more correct about other generations having to suffer with the consequences, my generation being one and now hers," kazekage said with a sorrowful tone as he eyebrows. When Sakura heard this, she was shocked because, to be honest, she had no idea what could be so terrible. Kakashi, meanwhile, sighed because he knew that Naruto was right and that not only his generation had to bear the consequences, but the one before them had as well. Kakashi sighed and remarked, "Even so, she was out of line." In response to Kazecage's statement, "I understand, but please don't scold her too harshly," Kakashi nodded. Changing the topic, Kazekage stated, "I will be departing for Konoha in 3 days. Hopefully this might give her time to cool down and interact with my son." "Kazekage, could I request that we please leave in 6 days, replied Kakashi. The Kazekage raised an eyebrow and asked, "Why, may I ask?" "I don't wish to reveal too much about Naruto, but in 4 days she will become a lot weaker than she normal for a full day," Kakashi said. Kazekage nodded and said, "I understand, and I will honor your desire to keep the full reason for this a secret. My help outside will take you to your hotel where you can spend the week," the Kazekage said, getting to his feet and shoving Sakura and Kakashi away. Naruto standing atop the village wall. When Sasuke got to the top of the wall, he yelled, "Naruto." Naruto was sitting at the edge of the wall, hugging her knees, with her face buried in them and her tails curled up resting behind her. Sasuke noticed this. Sasuke's legs dangled over the wall as he sat beside Naruto. The sound of Naruto hiccuping and crying took Sasuke by surprise. Sasuke, unsure of what to do, moved closer to Naruto until they were touching. After a few minutes of silence, Sasuke said softly, "Naruto, I'm not sure what to say, but know that I'm here for you." Taking her head off her knees, Naruto said softly, "Why do people do this? Why, I don't understand." Sasuke's response was, "I don't know, I wish I knew. If there is anything I can do, please let me know," Sasuke said quietly. Naruko said, "Let me just stay like this for a bit longer," before putting her head on Sasuke's shoulder and closing her eyes. After blushing a little, Sasuke wrapped his hand around her and laid it lightly on her shoulder. For the entire sunset, the two stayed in that position. Sasuke eventually noticed that Naruko had dozed off. Someone shouted, "Yo Sasuke," from behind him. Sasuke saw who the voice belonged to and asked, "Pakun." Pakun conveyed his message. "Kakashi sent me to see if she was okay and to show you back to the hotel when you were ready." One of Kakashi's dog summons, Pakun, was used for tracking or message delivery. Pakun is a little brown bulldog wearing a headband and an open blue shirt that bears the Konoha symbol. Sasuke got up and picked up Naruko's bridal style, saying, "Well, guess should leave now, she fell asleep a while ago." As they walked to the hotel, Sasuke followed Pakun slowly. When Sasuke entered the hotel room, he saw Sakura sleeping on one couch and Kakashi reading a book on another. When Kakashi heard Sasuke enter, he inquired, "How is she?" "She is fine, I think, though she was very angry at first." "Kakashi Sensei, I've never seen her like this," commented Sasuke, with a slight frown. Before going back to the main room, Sasuke went to a room and put Naruko on the bed so she could sleep for the night. Sakura was similarly placed on the bed beside Naruko by Kakashi. Kakashi put a hand on Sasuke's shoulder and said, "Sasuke, I know it's hard to see her like this, but she needs someone to rely on, now more than ever," before heading to his room. Before going to bed himself, Sasuke stood there silently. The following morning Naruko rubbed the sleep from her eyes and slowly woke up. She observes that the room she is in is rather plain and light brown. Sakura's backpack is on the bed next to hers, but Naruko notices that it is empty. As Naruko entered, she noticed her team seated on the couches in what appeared to be the main living room. Sasuke hurriedly got up and approached Naruko, saying, "Naruko, you wake. How you feeling?" "Thanks Sasuke-kun, I'm fine," Naruko said softly, grinning a little. Saying, "I see that's good, come Kakashi. Sensei was just about to tell us what we are going to do." Sasuke gestured for Naruko to go to the couch. After giving a nod, Naruko went to sit beside Sakura. Following Naruko, Sasuke took a seat next to him, putting Kakashi across the couch from them. "The kazekage agreed with my offer to leave 5 days from now, so we will leave the day after Naruko's new moon problem," Kakashi told his teammates. When Kakashi said, "I will give you this day off to explore the village, have fun, and relax. Tomorrow we will be training again," his team gave him a few nods. Sakura claimed to have left something behind as the Genin trio departed the hotel, and she hurried to retrieve it, leaving Naruko and Sasuke by themselves. Sasuke shifted his feet from side to side and asked, "So Naruko, do you want to have that date tonight seeing that we have the time?" "Yay, sure, though I don't have anything to wear for the occasion," replied Naruko. Sasuke offered to buy Naruko something and said, "That's fine, we can go as we are, though if you really want to we can find a shop and get you something." Naruko smiled and blushed as she said, "No, it's okay, you don't have to do that for me, so sure, let's have that date tonight." Sasuke smiled and said, "Awesome, make sure you are ready by 7 tonight, with joy." "Hey guys, I found what I wanted," Sakura exclaimed as she hurried back to rejoin her group. Team 7 spent the majority of the day touring all the locations and familiarizing themselves with the area. Meanwhile, Sasuke was searching for locations for their date with Naruko. Sasuke grinned as they spotted a carnival, recalling its location. Sakura wanted to attend the carnival, but she discovered that it wouldn't be open until 6 o'clock tonight. Before Team 7 made their way back to the hotel, Sakura puffed and huffed a few times. Naruko had just spent the last hour preparing for her date, which was in a few minutes, and she was extremely anxious. Sakura was becoming annoyed by her pacing. "Calm down Naruko, he will be here," Sakura said in an attempt to soothe Naruko. "Yeah, I know, I'm just worried I might do something stupid or embarrassing or..." Sakura stood in front of Naruko and told her to stop pacing, saying, "Naruko, you will be fine, just be yourself. You have nothing to fear." "Knock. Knock." Sakura said, "He is here. Go on, go answer the door," as she heard the knock. After giving a nod, Naruko moved slowly in the direction of the door. Naruko glanced back and saw Sakura nod once more before turning back to the door. After inhaling deeply, Naruko opened the door. As soon as the door opened, Sasuke gave a small gasp. With the exception of her hair being down rather than in her typical ponytail, Naruko was still dressed normally. Sasuke blushed because, to be honest, he hadn't seen Naruko with her hair down yet and felt that she looked more attractive that way. Still blushing a little, Sasuke said, "Hey Naru-chan, ready to go?" Naruko said, Hi, blushing a little. "Let us go then," Sasuke said, extending his arm. Before leaving for their date, Naruko nodded and linked her arm with Sasuke's. For a few minutes, Naruko and Sasuke strolled around the village, primarily discussing how Konoha finds life in Suna different. They found the carnival earlier that day and arrived there shortly after. Naruko exclaimed, "Oh wow," as she took in the carnival decorations and lights. Naruko whispered, "It's beautiful," praising the carnival. "Yay it is," Sasuke added, expressing his admiration for the carnival. Naruko and Sasuke spent the next few hours shopping from store to store, occasionally purchasing food treats, playing every game they could find. Sasuke gave Naruko a small, fluffy red toy fox that he had won at one of the games. "Aw, it's so cute," Naruko exclaimed as she gave the little fox a tight hug. Naruko said, "Thank you, I really love it," to Sasuke. Sasuke grinned and said, "Pleasure. I thought you would like it," pleased that Naruko enjoyed the present. Sasuke took Naruko by the hand and escorted her to a location, saying, "Oh, it's almost time, come, they're starting the fireworks soon." When Naruko realized Sasuke was holding her hand, she flushed. With no idea of their destination, Naruko simply followed Sasuke. Before Sasuke approached a building, they both ran for a few minutes. When Sasuke picked her up and held her bridal style, Naruko yelled and automatically wrapped her arms around his neck. Sasuke leapt and swiftly climbed the building's wall while holding a very red Naruko. Upon reaching the summit, Sasuke proceeded to the opposite side's edge and gently helped Naruko stand again. Naruko turned to face Sasuke, who was still blushing, and turned away from him. Naruko's eyes widened and she silently gasped at the sight before her, losing her blush instantly and freezing. Since they were lined up along the carnival's main, wide road, Naruko could see the entire event. Both of them were able to see the lights, the decorations, and the people moving from one store to another. From the carnival, they could hear the faint sound of laughter and mummers. After admiring the view for a few minutes, Sasuke said, "I saw this spot when we first found the carnival earlier today. I wondered what the view would be like from here." Softly, Naruko said, It's beautiful. Thank you Sasuke-kun. This is really amazing," as she continued to gaze at the scenery. When Sasuke said, "Yeah, it is amazing. Wait here, I'll be back in a few seconds," he leapt back down the building. Naruko continued to gaze at the scenery as she walked until she was directly on the edge. She turned when she heard footsteps and saw Sasuke carrying a basket. After walking to Naruko's location and setting the basket down, Sasuke pulled out a blanket and laid it down. A portion of the blanket dangled over the building's edge. As Sasuke emptied the basket, Naruko sat down with her legs dangling over the edge. Sasuke had brought some refreshing beverages and some snacks. After setting them slightly behind them, he sat down beside Naruko and allowed his legs to swing back and forth over the edge. Both of them noticed lanterns rising toward the sky a minute later. When they saw the lanterns, they both gasped. Naruko questioned, "I wonder what the occasion is." Sasuke answered, "Not sure, I didn't ask though, I'm quite curious." After about 15 minutes of sailing into the sky, the lanterns were no longer visible. Soon after, the first firework burst into the sky, making Naruko and Sasuke smile. "Wow," exclaimed Naruko. It was the first time Naruko had ever seen fireworks, since they only went off on her birthday. The worst day for something so lovely. She has heard them go off but has never bothered to look. Sasuke said, "It really is something else," and he thought it was really lovely. Even with his family, he finds this time to be more beautiful than all the other times he has seen them. Soon after the fireworks began, Sasuke gasped at Naruko's hand. After blushing, Naruko clenched her fists and wrapped some of her tails around Sasuke's waist. Even after the fireworks were over, they sat like that for a long time. Naruko put her head on Sasuke's shoulder and they sat in pleasant silence for a few minutes after the fireworks had stopped. Sasuke put a hand on Naruko's head and gave it a gentle rub as he glanced at her. Sasuke kept gently massaging Naruko's head after hearing her purr. Naruko closed her eyes and relished the affection as her purring grew a little louder. Sasuke said, "You're really cute when you purr," which caused Naruko to flush. Naruko said, Thank you," with a slight sense of embarrassment. Naruko yawned as he began to feel exhausted after a few more minutes of sitting in cozy silence. When Sasuke saw this, he picked Naruko up and gave her a ride on his back. When Naruko felt herself being lifted, she wrapped her arms and tails around Sasuke and grinned. A bunchen was left to clean up after Sasuke leapt down the building. Not wanting to try to carry her with them on, Sasuke thought, I'm glad she took off her weights. I don't think I could have carried her with them on. Trying to picture him with 1,000 kilograms weighing him down, Sasuke thought, I can barely handle 40 kilograms apiece, but 215 kilogram apiece is nuts. Sasuke and Naruto eventually arrived at their hotel for the week. When Sasuke entered their room, he noticed that Sakura and Kakashi were both gone and must have gone to sleep. Naruto was gently led down by Sasuke, who had stopped in front of the door leading to her room. Thank you Sasuke-kun, Naruto said quietly, that was the best time of my life. I really had fun, as she looked into Sasuke's eyes. Sasuke looked back into Naruto's eyes and said, I'm glad you had a great time. You're not the only one who had the best time of their life. Not sure what would happen, Sasuke asked, so what now? Are we boyfriend and girlfriend? Naruto said, I honestly don't know, I guess so, being equally clueless. Sasuke proposed, how about we go from there and have another date when we get back? With a, sure I would love that, Naruto answered. I guess I will see you in the morning then? Sasuke rubbed his head. With a, yay see you in the morning, Naruto opened her door and entered. Naruto turned to face Sasuke and called, Sasuke-kun? Sasuke turned to Naruto and said, yay? Need anything? With haste, Naruto approached Sasuke and embraced him tightly, wrapping her tails around him as well. Naruto? Sasuke asked, blushing and a little perplexed. Naruto whispered, good night Sasuke-kun, as she relaxed in the embrace. Good night Naru-chan, Sasuke said, giving the hug back. Naruto said, and thank you, before letting go of the hug and going to her room. Sasuke grinned as he watched Naruto walk into her room. After a few minutes of staring at the door, Sasuke snapped out of it and made his way to his room, where he felt incredibly content. Naruto spent some time in the seal discussing her date and how much she enjoyed it with Kurama, so she didn't immediately fall asleep. Throughout the entire ordeal, Kurama grinned, genuinely delighted for her. However, Kurama made a silent vow to figure out the best way to kill the Uchiha slowly and painfully if he ever broke Naruto's heart. Whether it's the Uchiha or someone else, he will not spare anyone who would break her heart. The following day Naruto awoke gradually from the most restful sleep of her life. It was the most restful sleep Naruto had ever experienced. Naruto had never felt so energized as she did this morning. Sakura, who still desired to sleep, was not particularly impressed. Kakashi was reading his orange book on the couch when Naruto left her room after taking a shower and changing into new clothes. As he read that book endlessly, Naruto rolled her eyes. Naruto cheerfully said, Ohio Kakashi. As he passed Kakashi and grabbed a bite to eat. Ni? Since graduation day, she hasn't called me that. Hearing Naruto refer to her as Kakashi. Kakashi thought, she seems a lot happier than normal, must have gone well last night. Kakashi inquired with a hint of curiosity, Ohio Naru-chan, I presume everything went well last night? Yip, it was the best time ever, Naruto said cheerfully, sitting on the couch across from Kakashi and blushing a little at the recollection. As he continued to read his book, Kakashi remarked, good to hear, must have been a good time seeing you like this. Sasuke said, Ohio Kakashi. Sensei, Naru-chan, as he emerged behind Naruto. Naruto turned her head and her ears pricked up. Sasuke-kun, Naruto said joyfully as her tails joyfully waved in all directions. Sasuke asked, glancing down at Naruto, sleep well? Very, and you? Answered Naruto. Sasuke answered, yip, thanks, saying that although he had slept well, it had taken him some time to relax enough to fall asleep. Sakura entered her house shortly after Sasuke finished eating, appearing to be a zombie. She dragged her feet to the kitchen and said, Ohio, with fatigue. Seeing the zombie, like Sakura with her hair all over the place, Naruto remarked, well, someone didn't sleep well, making bad hair days appear to be flawless. Naruto inquired, what happened to you? Training, Sakura said, carrying a bowl of cereal as she made her way to the couch. Training? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow as she observed Sakura seated beside her. Yay, I asked Kakashi to help me with some training yesterday after you left. Had me do the full fitness routine before making me do it again while trying to get rocks to stick to my forehead, Sakura moaned. Sakura moaned again, I think I have sand in places I never knew I had. This made Naruto a little more excited about the jutsu that Kakashi taught Sasuke. As soon as Sakura here finishes getting ready, you will be training again. After the normal part Naruto, you will continue with your K's no Yoroi. Sasuke, with that jutsu I taught you, Kakashi said. In the hopes that she would learn it, Naruto asked, Jutsu, what did Kakashi.ni teach you? Sasuke turned to face Kakashi, who nodded, allowing him to reveal what it was. It's Kakashi's original jutsu Chidori. It's a Raiden jutsu, you saw him use it when he killed Haku with it, Sasuke clarified. Recalling the jutsu, Naruto remarked, oh that jutsu, the one which made Kakashi.ni look like he was holding lightning. Sasuke said, yes that one, though I don't think I or Kakashi will teach it to you, with a hint of grief that he might not be able to instruct Naruto. Naruto questioned, wait why? Depressed that despite knowing a good number of jutsu thanks to Kurama, she would never learn a new one. You definitely have the speed required for it, but that speed is what will be your downfall. It's a jutsu that needs the Sharingan to help company ordinate with it. This is because the speed you will be moving at will prevent you from seeing and reacting to counterattacks to the jutsu, Kakashi stated. Naruto questioned, wait, so you mean the tunnel vision effect? Yes, those without the Sharingan will suffer from tunnel vision while using the jutsu, Kakashi said. Recalling that she has never experienced tunnel vision, even at her maximum speed, Naruto remarked, well, if that is the problem, then I won't need to worry about it. I don't suffer from tunnel vision. The only thing I might suffer from is reaction time. I won't teach it to you unless you can get your reaction down to lowest time possible. Even then, if I am not happy with it, I won't teach it to you, Kakashi stated. While regretfully nodding, Naruto acknowledged Kakashi's justification. Besides, you already have your K's no Yoroi, which has the same effect as Chidori, and the way you have mastered the transformation part, it might be even more powerful than Chidori, Kakashi said in an attempt to lift Naruto's spirits. Hearing that startled Naruto. She was genuinely unaware of her K's no Yoroi's full power. Since the chunin exams are in a month, Team 7 trained a little harder than normal for the next 3 days, according to Kakashi. Kakashi raised Sasuke's and Sakura's weights from 40 kilograms to 55 kilograms, and Naruto's weights from 215 kilograms to 230 kilograms each. Sakura reasoned that she wouldn't need to do the fitness training this morning because she had already completed it last night. She was forced to do it again while still attempting to get rocks to adhere to her forehead, and she had never been more mistaken. Soon after, while Sakura was still getting rocks to adhere to her forehead, Kakashi had her running from top to bottom along the village wall. At the end of the day, Naruto had to return to the hotel with a faint Sakura. By the middle of the second day, Naruto had finally succeeded in using her K's no Yoroi to cover her entire body, including all 5 tails. Kakashi stated that she could either begin or continue her lightning seishitsu henka training for the remainder of the day. Sasuke stated that Naruto needed to form the chakra resistance paper into a ball, similar to the leaf, after she had mastered the first step by the end of the day. Suna had no leaves at all, so it was fortunate that Naruto had brought many. Once more, Sakura was unconscious and didn't even wake up for dinner, so Naruto had to carry her back to the hotel. Since Sasuke still wasn't proficient in Chidori, Kakashi predicted that it would take him a month to become proficient. Naruto was instructed to maintain her K's no Yoroi active throughout the entire training session on the 3rd day. Naruto looked at Kakashi in confusion, assuming it would make her training easier. Kakashi slapped Naruto's arm with a piece of paper that had odd symbols on it. Kakashi.ni? Naruto inquired, staring at the paper in confusion. Sasuke was also intrigued, but Sakura was too exhausted to give a damn. Resistance seal makes it nearly impossible for your body to move. You will be doing your training with that and your K's no Yoroi on. The seal is to stop your jutsu from making it easier to move. Kakashi explained, your jutsu will be active so you can get used to it being active, allowing your body to get accustomed to it. This will allow you to refine the amount of chakra you will need to keep the jutsu running, as he made a half-Tora hand seal and activated it. Naruto experienced the effects immediately and struggled to activate her K's no Yoroi by getting her hands on the Tora seal. One more thing, if your jutsu drops you will restart today's whole training routine from the beginning and will not return until you do the whole routine without dropping the jutsu once. When you get to your lightning seishitsu henka training you can figure out how to train while still keeping your jutsu active. The earlier rule still applies, so if you drop it during your lightning seishitsu henka training you will start again, starting with the fitness training again, Kakashi clarified with a grin that could be seen through his face mask. Naruto's training had to be restarted numerous times. She had to start over after dropping her jutsu after having just begun her lightning seishitsu henka training. Sakura calmed Naruto down when she started to become irritated, pointing out that being upset or irritated would only make it more difficult to focus. This time, Naruko wasn't done with her training, so Sasuke had to carry a faint Sakura back to the hotel. Kakashi stayed behind to watch Naruko in case she fainted as well. Kakashi thought she would faint any moment now. In the end, Naruko completed 7 full sessions of fitness training. Naruko and Kakashi couldn't remember how many times she had to start over during her workout. After 3 full hours, Naruko was able to complete her Lightning Seishitsu Henka training. Naruko walked to Kakashi after dropping her jutsu. Naruko tripped and would have fallen face first on the way to Kakashi, but Kakashi caught her. Kakashi gave Naruko a piggyback ride back to the hotel after Naruko landed on his back. Naruko had dozed off just before reaching the hotel. She does have a limit, then. Perhaps this is the only way to make her much stronger going forward. Kakashi will undoubtedly raise her training to a much higher level, but she needs to go beyond her limitations, which she has only been hitting for a few months. The following day Naruko let out a few moans and groans as he gradually woke up. Sakura had already woken up and was changing into new clothes. Holding her head and shaking it, Naruko moaned, "Wow, I know how you feel." Sakura remarked, "So the stamina freak does run out of stamina, that makes me feel slightly better," a little taken aback by Naruko's extreme exhaustion from training or anything else. Naruko got up and said, "Yeah, I don't think I have ever passed out from training so hard," before taking a shower. Sakura said, "You lucky," but decided not to finish because she was aware of how sensitive Naruko's hearing is. Sakura's argument was confirmed when Naruko yelled, "Yay yay," through the door. Upon arriving at the training ground, Naruko went to the base of the wall and began to feel the effects of the new moon while sitting in the shade. When Sasuke saw Naruko slumping, he ran to her and called, "Naruko." Naruko remarked, "Sasuke-kun, I'm fine. It must be new moon in a few minutes," as she felt her strength ebbing. Kakashi sat down beside Naruko and read his book. "For today, Naruko, you can just rest here as much as you can. The rest continue with your training," he said. "How you feeling?" inquired Kakashi. Naruko said, "Weak. I can feel my strength leaving me," with a weary tone. Kakashi said, "I see well, take it easy," as he took Naruko's weights off. Naruko said, "Oh thanks, I forgot about those," as she felt her weights being taken off. Kakashi placed the weights in a ceiling scroll and remarked, "Sure. I don't think it's a good idea to keep them on while you're like this." After finishing their fitness training, Sasuke and Sakura went to see how Naruko was doing about 2 hours later. As they arrived, they noticed that Naruko's breathing was becoming more rapid. Her body appeared to slightly shrink, but her breathing soon returned to normal. Naruko's tails shrank in size until they vanished entirely, and her ears vanished into her head. Naruko's claw-like nails withdrew and began to resemble those of a typical person. Her teeth were visible as they shrank to the typical size of a human's teeth. Even though Team 7 was shocked by what happened next, her hair stayed at the same length. Her eyebrows and hair both seemed to change color, first appearing to be fading and then turning orange-red. Team 7 noticed that Naruko's eyes were changing when she opened them. Her pupils became circular, and her eyes took on a slightly greenish-blue hue. Kakashi was very perplexed by this since he thought her eyes and hair would revert to their previous colors before Naruko was transformed into a Hanyu. Red hair. Green eyes. What's happening is that prior to her transformation, she had yellow hair and blue eyes. Kakashi, still a little perplexed, thought, looking at her now, if it weren't for her whisker birthmarks and the slight orange tint in her hair, one would think she was her mother. Is Naruko's hair red? When Sakura and Sasuke saw the red hair, they both thought at once. Naruko said in a weary tone, "Hey guys, what's with the looks you giving me?" Sakura remarked, "I didn't know you had red hair, or is it orange, can't quite tell," believing Naruko to be more attractive with the orange-red hair. Naruko said, "Huh, red hair? What do you mean?" not feeling as weak as she had before. Sakura gave Naruko a mirror that she had taken out. Naruko noticed that her hair was orangey red in the mirror, with the red being more noticeable. Naruko was taken aback because she hadn't anticipated that her hair would change. Naruko exclaimed, "So I do have red hair. Wow, it's pretty," in admiration of her new hairstyle. "Hey Kurama, tell me about my red hair," Naruko questioned Kurama. Kurama thought, "I don't know Kit, you had yellow blonde hair before you changed into a Hanyu. The change might have made one of your parents' genes stronger than the other, recognizing that hair from somewhere. I heard that the Hanyu transformation is like being reborn, but I didn't think they meant literally," Kurama said. Naruko stood up and fumbled a little before saying, "Well, I still feel weak and a little exhausted, but not as bad as I was earlier." Kakashi said, that may be so, but still, you should still take it easy, not wanting her to make a big move. Sasuke grabbed Naruko and pushed her back down so she could sit down. Kakashi's right, you should take it easy and sit down for a while, he said. With a sigh, Naruko complied and allowed Sasuke to sit her down. This doing nothing is going to drive me mad soon, Naruko sighed and crossed her arms. Kakashi said, get used to it, maybe we should send you to Shikamaru for lessons, before returning to his book. Naruko simply sighed and went into the seal. Hey Kurama, you said that this was the perfect time to defeat my evil self. Can we do it now or should we wait for the next new moon? Naruko said. When to do it is up to you. We can do it now if you want. I have no idea how long this will take, so if you choose to do it, let Kakashi know, Kurama responded. After giving a nod, Naruko stepped away from the seal. Naruko turned to Kakashi and said, Hey Kakashi. There is something I need to do. I will be trying to defeat my evil self. I don't know how long it will take. Partially understanding what Naruko had asked, Kakashi questioned, evil self? Okay, be careful, you sure this is safe? Yay, Kyuubi says nothing will happen, and if I lose I will just have to try again until I get it right, Naruko responded. Since the timing couldn't be coincidental, Kakashi questioned, I presume the new moon has something to do with this? Only that it will make it easier to defeat my evil self, Naruko nodded. The words, I see. Good luck and see you when you wake up, Kakashi said. Kakashi got a little nosebleed when Naruko said, thanks and be sure to take good care of my body. Don't do anything too naughty, I don't think Sasuke will like you doing something with it. Though please do tell Sasuke-kun he is more than welcome to. Naruko eased up and stepped back into the seal. Seeing Naruko return, Kurama remarked, I take your returning is saying that you're going to attempt it. According to Naruko, who was sitting in the lotus position, hi, I'm ready. Any last tips? Kurama gave a final piece of advice, saying, just be yourself and don't let what she says get to you. After hearing the normal seal's background noise stop, Naruko closed her eyes for a few minutes and then opened them again. Naruko noticed that, aside from the cage and walls, she was in a similar location to the seal. A voice said, so you finally came to meet me, from behind Naruko. With haste, Naruko spun around and positioned herself. Naruko remarked, so you're my evil self, after spotting a copy of her. Naruko remarked, though you look like my normal self, noticing a slight change. Instead of her typical blue eyes, her replica had gold ones, and her hair was her typical gold blonde. The evil Naruko said, evil self. No, I am your true self, in a charmingly sensual voice. Naruko questioned, true self? What do you mean? The malevolent Naruko asked, why, don't you remember what happened outside Tezuna's house? With wide eyes, Naruko questioned, that was you? You made me kill them all in cold blood? Made you kill them? You have that wrong, that was your deepest desire, to kill them slowly and painfully while smiling and laughing throughout it all, evil Naruko grinned. Naruko retorted, you're wrong, I would never desire that. No point trying to lie to me, I know everything about you, your every thought is my own, just a little more open, evil Naruko chuckled. Naruko uttered the words, somewhat disgusted, more open? How is that more open, you're just sick. Evil Naruko retorted, you and I are more alike than you realize, as he circled Naruko. I am nothing like you, retorted Naruko sternly. At the end, evil Naruko rolled her eyes and said, say whatever keeps you asleep at night. So why are you here? No doubt to defeat me. Naruko grinned and said, yes, I'm here to defeat you and get rid of you. With a hungry expression on her face, evil Naruko licked her lips and said, you can never get rid of me because I am you. When I take control of you I am going to have some fun. The evil Naruko said, don't give me that look, surely you have thought about it, after observing the expression Naruko gave her. Thought about what? Responded Naruko. Oh come now, you should know. Don't you just want to ride that Uchiha cock till you pass out and more? Let yourself feel what it's like to slip that warm cock in you. What it's like to feel full while connected to him. Evil Naruko uttered a few moans in between his seductive words, and to feel him spray his love all over you, in all of you? Give him the ride of his life? The rather descriptive fantasy caused Naruko's face to flush completely. The evil Naruko went on, don't you also want to give that pink-haired girl a try? Your tails can be quite useful, you know. I'm sure that girl would love, even beg, to let you keep her suspended in the air while you full and ravage all of her holes, as the real Naruko's face grew redder by the moment. Naruko had to acknowledge that she did feel a little sexy, which made her question whether she is straight or attracted to other women. In an attempt to distract herself from the rather erotic images, Naruko frantically shook her head. Imagining all the possible outcomes, evil Naruko went on, I wonder what Shikamaru-kun could do with that cage jutsu of his. Maybe make a few more fun toys. Even Kiba and his pet could give us some fun. Although Naruko's face turned a deeper shade of red, the thought of fighting Akamaru made him feel rather repulsed. Evil Naruko smirked and said, I'm guessing you blushing hard like that means you're wanting to give a try. No I don't, Naruko shook her head exasperatedly. Spoil sport, the malevolent Naruko muttered, sulking. The evil Naruko said, or maybe we can have a go, as he materialized in front of her and used both hands to grope her breasts. The sudden spark of pleasure caused Naruko to gasp in silence. Swiftly slapping evil Naruko's hand away, Naruko leapt back, gaining some separation. The malevolent Naruko licked her lips once more and said, don't deny you didn't like that. I know I would. With a firm, enough I am here to end this, Naruko charged in at the malevolent Naruko. Without being able to hit one another, the two exchanged blows. Both could anticipate each other's movements and counterattacks with ease. Naruko delivered a left uppercut shortly after a right hook. The hook and uppercut were easily avoided by the malevolent Naruko. She twisted her hand around and grabbed the evil Naruko's head before pushing it down as soon as her left hand passed over it. After taking a few steps back, Naruko pulled her right knee up in an attempt to knee the evil Naruko in the face while lowering her face. The malevolent Naruko effortlessly deflected the blow by using both hands. The malevolent Naruko used her strength to push her leg back down. Then she continued to gain momentum by placing her hands on the ground and performing a handstand. Using her momentum from the handstand, the evil Naruko lifted her legs from behind her, allowing one to continue forward with the intention of striking her shoulder. After swiftly grabbing the leg, Naruko turned and used her momentum to his advantage. Nearly 20 meters in front of her, Naruko pushed the malevolent Naruko over her shoulder. Head first, the malevolent Naruko sailed through the air, waiting for her speed to decrease. The evil Naruko twisted in midair, facing up, and then arched her back backwards, landing on her hands, because her speed was slow enough. With her hands on the ground after each flip, the evil Naruko used her momentum to perform multiple reverse somersaults before gracefully landing on her feet, skidding back a few inches, and coming to a complete stop. Before attempting to come up with a strategy to defeat this cheap knockoff, as Naruko described it, she went back to her stance. How am I going to beat her? She is as familiar with my tricks and moves as I am with hers. We can't both get a hit. Unable to think of a solution, Naruko thought, maybe I could exhaust her, but I might wind up exhausting myself as well. Naruko went on to think, she will undoubtedly be able to use all of my jutsus, so that is definitely a no-go. She was relieved that the evil Naruko hadn't yet moved. I know your every move, trick, ability, the works. I know all of it, the malevolent Naruko blurted out. You can't beat me. In response, Naruko said, you're in the same boat as me. You're not the only one that knows everything, confirming what she had said earlier. I wonder how she feels if she is truly my other half, Naruko thought sadly all of a sudden. She must undoubtedly be as lonely as I was and most likely still is, Naruko thought sorrowfully. When the evil Naruko saw the dejected look on Naruko's face, he grinned. Are you depressed that I will dominate you and that you can't defeat me? Naruko, the evil one, said cheekily. No, I'm not thinking about that at all. You should understand my current thoughts if you truly are me, Naruko said, getting to her feet and lowering her posture. What do you know, TCH? You found someone. So what, do you no longer think I'm good enough? Are you simply going to throw me away now that I'm useless? With bitterness, evil Naruko said. What if everything we've gone through was pointless or no longer matters to you? With equal bitterness, she went on. No, that would never occur to me. Naruko shook her head and said, you should know better than anyone else that what we've been through means something. You mean something. Naruko smiled slightly and said, I thank you for being the strength I never had, the will to continue on. I doubt I would be here without you. You're absolutely correct, you wouldn't be present. Before charging in, the malevolent Naruko said, no, just die and give me control over this body. With a heavy grant from the force of the charge and the fist that found its way into her stomach, Naruko made no move but instead embraced the evil Naruko tightly, shocking and surprising her. What does this signify? In an attempt to move away from the embrace, the malevolent Naruko uttered these words. Naruko said, thank you for everything, in a quiet voice. What gives you the strength, and how can you just accept it like that? Angrily, the malevolent Naruko inquired. Because I accept you in the same way that I have accepted our past. Regarding strength, you are my strength and my hope that, like the few who already do, there is a chance that people will finally accept us for who we are, Naruto said quietly. So, are you simply going to throw me away? Have you forgotten me? Delete me? The malevolent Naruto inquired, beginning to weep a little. No, Naruto shook her head and tightened her embrace. I would never, just as you once helped me. Let me help you find peace. Let us become one and help others that need it, she said. Just promise to never forget me, said Naruto, who took the hug back. Naruto responded, vowing to never forget her. I will never forget you and I never go back on my word because that's our ninja way. TT Ibeo, he said. Both of them were enveloped in a blinding light, and when it vanished, the other Naruto did too. The best way to describe Naruto's feelings is whole, as she senses her other half within herself and feels stronger and more composed than she did before. Naruto closed her eyes, then opened them again to find herself sitting in front of the cage with Kurama staring at her, and she was also at peace with everything that had happened in her life, letting go of any grudges she might have had against her village. I sense that you've changed and are content with who you are. I assume everything went smoothly? Sensing that Naruto was much more composed than before, Kurama inquired. Naruto apologized while getting to his feet. Yes it did and thanks Kurama, don't think I could have without you, he said. Kurama shook his head and said, I just sent you there, you handled the rest on your own. You helped me more than you think, Naruto remarked, glancing up at Kurama. If you say so. After kicking Naruto out of the seal, Kurama said, now go on, you have been in here the entire day. The real-world Sasuke was a little concerned about why Naruto wasn't waking up, even though Team 7 had just begun their journey back to the hotel. Kakashi had informed them that Naruto was doing something, but they couldn't tell them what just yet, so they understood, but Sasuke was still a little worried. Sasuke felt Naruto stir a few minutes from their hotel, and when she opened her eyes slowly and with great stiffness, she saw that she was being carried and blinked a few times to see who it was. Kun Sasuke. When Naruto finally saw who was carrying her, she asked, Are you awake, Naruto? Have you done what you needed to do and is everything okay? Sasuke inquired, glad that Naruto had awakened. Naruto replied, Yeah, everything is fine and yes, I did. It couldn't have gone better, before she closed her eyes and went to sleep. Today had taken a toll on Naruto. When he saw a sleeping Sakura being carried by Kakashi, who had fainted again from today's hard training, Sasuke shook his head and grinned as Team 7 made their way to their hotel to rest after yet another exhausting training day. Knock. Knock. The knock was met with a muffled, come in, response. Kakashi bowed and said, Team 7 reporting in, as they walked into the room. So as you said, we will leave today. I would have liked you to meet the other escort team, but unfortunately they only come back last night from a mission. They are waiting at the gate for us, said the kazekage as he stood up. As he left his office and made his way to the entrance, the kazekage inquired, So are you back up to strength, Naruto? Naruto responded, Unfortunately no, not yet, it's still another hour till I regain my full strength, with Team 7 trailing the kazekage closely behind. The kazekage picked up the pace to the village entrance, not wanting to waste any more time. Sorry, but we don't have time to delay. Either way we won't make it to the border before nightfall and you don't want to spend the night in the desert unless you have to, he said. The kazekage and Team 7 arrived at the main entrance in a flash. 3 people were waiting at the entrance when they got there. The first individual stood to the left of the 3 others. She was wearing a cloak similar to the one Naruto wore on her way here, so Naruto couldn't see much of her. The only distinction was that the cloak, which was white and covered her entire body except for her blue eyes, had sleeves. At least that's what Naruto believed it might be. A huge black fan on her back. However, the second individual had no cloak on. The girl was slightly taller than the boy. His red hair resembled that of the kazekage, only redder. Naruto was unsure of the type of tattoo, but it was a red scar in the shape of the kanji for love, located above his right eye. His eyes are cyan with a black ring around the periphery. The severe, lifeless look the individual was giving them was what frightened Team 7 the most. It was as if Naruto had known him all her life. Every time the other 2 ninja looked at the boy, Naruto could see the fear in their eyes. Although she didn't see the typical icy, hateful look she received, she assumed the boy did get his share of them. The boy is dressed in shinobi sandals, gray long pants, and a gray short-sleeved shirt. The brown gourd is held behind his back by a white sash that is draped over his clothing. Team 7 didn't know what was in the gourd. The tallest of the 3, the final individual was easily a full head size taller than the other boy. His face was exposed by his one-piece, dark brown bodysuit, which also covered the top of his head. He appeared to have ears on top of his head due to the top of the suit. His eyes were black, and his face was painted purple. Or was it makeup? Naruto pondered. There was an oval-shaped object wrapped in white bandages on his back. This person didn't wear a cloak either because of his suit. Naruto thought this man's suit and makeup made him look kind of funny. This is the other team that will be escorting me to Konoha. These are my kids, Temari, Gaara, and Kankuro, the kazekage said, introducing his 3 children in order of introduction. As the kazekage said, you can get to know each other on the way there and during our stay at Konoha, but for now we must move out. No dialogue could begin. A few minutes away from Suna, Naruto inquired, what is with the paint, or is it makeup? Inquiring as to why Kankuro's face was so heavily covered. Not pleased that Naruto believed it to be makeup, Kankuro retorted, it's war paint and it's for intimidation. Naruto laughed and then noticed that his suit was dark rather than light like everyone else's. Intimidation? I'm sorry, but with that suit of yours it makes you look funny, and how the hell can you survive in this heat wearing that? He asked. With a tick mark on his forehead, Kankuro remarked, it's actually pretty cool in here, with a few added features that prevent it from getting hot. Kankuro pretended to be smooth as he asked, and enough about me, what about you? I definitely would like to get to know a hot girl like you. Sasuke's eye twitched a couple of times. So you're a playboy? Sorry to tell you but I am taken, but you're more than welcome to look, Naruto said, biting her finger sensuously. This caused Sasuke's eye to twitch once more, and when Naruto cupped Kankuro's breasts and made them bounce a few times, Kankuro's nose bled. Temari, meanwhile, was a little envious because, despite appearing to be a year or 2 younger than Naruto, she was a full cup size smaller. Temari was glad she had on a mask because otherwise, the others might have seen how flushed she was from observing Naruto play with her breasts. Sakura said, Kakashi. Sensei, see what you have done, you corrupted her, while glaring at Kakashi. Kakashi simply rubbed the back of his head and laughed uncomfortably. Naruto said, KK Kakashi, it's tea time, and then abruptly stopped, feeling extremely weak once more. Even after turning into a human, Naruto still felt exhausted and weak, but she was still able to move and engage in combat if necessary. Naruto now discovered that becoming a Hanyu and a human made her incredibly weak. Unable to stay upright, Naruto began to fall forward. Sasuke sat down and placed Naruto's head on his lap after swiftly catching her before she could fall to the ground. Soon after, Naruto regained consciousness and blushed upon seeing Sasuke directly overhead. When she realized she was resting her head on Sasuke's lap, her blushing got even worse. Her breathing rate rose for about a minute before returning to normal, just like the last time. The kazekage and his kids were interested in what was going on, but they were also perplexed. Gaara didn't give a damn. He simply believed that this girl was a helpless fool who wasn't worth the trouble to kill. Before the intervals between each pulse shortened to the point where they nearly seemed continuous, Naruto's body began to pulse slowly. Then, it abruptly stopped. After regaining most of her strength, Naruto got to her feet, but she was perplexed as to why she hadn't yet transformed into a Hanyu. She was forced to kneel on one knee after a single, strong burst passed through her body. In a quick reaction, Sasuke grabbed Naruto by the hand with one hand and grabbed her by the other shoulder with the other. She started to kneel on the ground, but Sasuke was unable to stop her in time. Her body throbbed with another powerful pulse. Naruto grunted in response to this pulse, letting out a little growl. Temari and Kankuro were somewhat taken aback and perplexed by the growl since they hadn't anticipated it. On the other hand, Gaara began to grin malevolently as he sensed Naruto's power gradually growing. Temari, Kankuro, and Sasuke were mildly alarmed by Naruto's repeated grunts and growls, though Sasuke was slightly alarmed for a different reason. Sakura and Kakashi were also a little worried because Naruto seemed to be experiencing more pain this time. Because of the mask that covered the majority of his face, the kazekage simply watched with great interest, but he didn't display it. Naruto felt another pulse, which caused her hair to come out of its ponytail. Around Naruto, a tiny crater developed, and the wind that gathered inside the crater's edge caused her hair to begin blowing upward. Sand and dust began to blow away from Naruto. Sasuke was knocked back a few inches by the unidentified force that created the crater. Seeing what might occur, Kakashi yelled at the others. Kakashi yelled, "Get back!" as he grabbed Sakura and Sasuke and repeatedly leapt back until they were around 30 meters from Naruto. Following suit, the kazekage and his kids leapt back until they touched down close to Kakashi. Nya! Naruko growled loudly while her voice changed to her demonic voice every few seconds before settling in it altogether. Naruko's pulse was stronger, which caused the crate to slightly enlarge and deepen. Naruko's 5 tails and ears sprang from her head in tandem with the pulse. Her fur on her tails and hair briefly turned gold before returning to their original orange-red hue. As though time had stopped, this pulse caused the rocks and sand that were floating upward to stop. Like the wind hadn't stopped blowing, her hair and tails kept blowing upward and flapping wildly. For a few seconds, Naruko remained silent throughout this section. Time seemed to slow down during this period, giving the impression that it was going on longer than it actually was. It appeared as though an explosion had occurred when Naruko released another, much stronger pulse. Sand and dust were carried away from Naruko by a strong wind, and the others had to shield their eyes from the sudden explosion. The dust that was floating around was swiftly removed by the strong local wind, exposing a crater that was 10 meters deep and wide, with Naruko at its center. Naruko landed in front of the group after leaping high into the air. Even the other members of Team 7 stood there, wide-eyed. The kazekage and his children were astonished and perplexed because they had never seen anything like this. Gaara was exactly the same, with the exception that he was beaming maniacally as he sensed Naruko's power. Naruko was standing there, her ears perched atop her head, her gold blonde hair, and 5 gold blonde tails waving joyfully behind her. Her eyes had returned to their typical fox-eye color of ocean blue. Before losing it and adopting a perplexed expression, Naruko had a smile on her face. Though she was unable to pinpoint the exact cause, Naruko noticed that she felt very different from the previous time. She wasn't sure if she was truly stronger or if it was just because she had felt so weak earlier, but she felt much stronger. The most obvious thing was that, although she was unable to identify what it was, she felt very different, in a positive way. She suspected it was related to overcoming her evil self. Sasuke spoke up after noticing Naruko's perplexed expression. When Sasuke asked, "Naruko, is everything alright? You seem confused." Naruko nodded and looked at herself. "Yeah, I'm fine. No, better than fine. I feel amazing and I can't place why," she said. When Naruko realized she was missing her cloak, she turned to face Kakashi, who had a neutral expression. Naruko said, "Kakashi, Sensei, where is my cloak?" Kakashi pointed to the crater and remarked, "I didn't realize I was going to ask you the same thing. You had it on before, well this." When Naruko saw the crater, her eyes widened as she followed Kakashi's finger. Naruko mentally noted that during the next new moon, she should avoid being close to any people, objects, or structures. Naruko and her body were now perfectly visible to Temari and Kankuro. She was only wearing her typical black tight, sleeved shirt and black tight, sleeved long pants because she wasn't wearing her weights or vest. Her muscles and curves were flaunted in what appeared to be a one-piece suit. She had a feminine appearance despite having slightly well-defined muscles that weren't overly large. Temari was envious since she knew she was the most attractive girl in her age group and more attractive than the majority of girls older than her. She also knew she had a fantastic body and figure. She was nothing compared to Naruko. Kankuro offered Naruko a chance to have a good look and whistled softly at her body. However, Temari rewarded him with an elbow to the ribs. When Kakashi presented the sibling with a scroll, her focus returned to Naruko. "Give the scroll to Naruko. Here, you might want this back," Kakashi said. Naruko exclaimed joyfully, "Huh? Oh my weights," and then he took the scroll and opened its contents. With a hint of excitement in her voice, Temari inquired, "You train with weights?" "I don't think weights is the right word," Sakura uttered, laughing awkwardly. "What do you mean?" inquired Temari. Sakura retorted, "Well, all 3 of us use weights, but we don't compare to Naruko," as Naruko was donning weights at her ankles and wrists. Sakura remarked, "Naruko lets Temari try to pick up your vest," observing that Naruko's vest was still on the ground. Naruko remarked, "Okay, sure, but be careful, I don't want you to hurt yourself," not liking the thought of someone other than herself or Kakashi taking the burden, particularly after Sasuke attempted to do so when they were only half as heavy as they are now. "If I can carry my fan, this will be easy," Temari asserted. Kakashi cautioned, "No really, be careful," which piqued Temari's interest in the reason behind her statement. Temari struggled mightily to lift the vest, and it was only after channeling her chakra that she was able to raise it a few inches off the ground. After carefully lowering the weight, Temari tried again to make sure it wasn't her. Temari struggled once more before turning back to the weight and looking at Naruko. After laughing and calling Temari weak, Kankuro attempted to pick up the vest but quickly gave up when it did not move. Confused, Kankuro questioned, what the hell is this thing? Sakura reiterated, like I said, I don't think weight is the right word. Just how heavy is it? My fan is 45 kilograms and I can easily carry it around, Tamari inquired. Naruko said, 230 kilograms, as if it were insignificant. Kankuro and Tamari exclaimed, 2.2.2.230 kilograms, in shock. Even the kazekage arched an eyebrow at this, but Gaara reminded them that she wasn't particularly concerned. Yay, and so are each of these, Naruko remarked, gesturing to the weights at her wrist and ankle. Each, but that means that you are carrying, yep, 1,150 kilograms in total, Naruko declared with pride. Tamari and Kankuro were genuinely unsure of how to respond to this. The kazekage inquired curiously, how is it that you have your extra features, aside from the ridicule's weight? Naruko replied, I'm not human, I'm a Hanyu, a Kitsune Hanyu to be exact, as she hastily put on her vest. The kazecage's statement, I see, most interesting, caught Kakashi's attention. Everyone turned to face Konoha when the kazekage said, all right, let's go out and catch up some ground. We have lost time because of this. Ga, a voice cried out abruptly. When the scream came, everyone turned to see the kazekage holding Gaara in one hand while inserting a syringe into Gaara's neck with the other. The others observe as Gaara's neck is injected with a purplish liquid by the kazekage. Gaara trembled, clenched his head, screamed, and muttered something as the kazekage let him go. In a state of confusion, Tamari and Kankuro asked, too. Sama, what did you do to Gaara? Unaware of what to anticipate, Team 7 took their positions. The kazekage laughed and said, Kukakuku. I'm just helping things along, before speaking in a spooky voice that wasn't his own. Kakashi had a strong suspicion of who this was after noticing the long, snake-like tongue licking the kazecage's lips and recalling that laugh from somewhere. Who the hell are you? You're not our father, Kankuro spit out. The kazekage said, Kukuku, I am no one special, just a certain someone to some people, as he peeled off his skin, disgusting everyone. Another face, this one extremely pale, appeared when the kazekage had finished peeling his face off. The face was nearly white, with purple rings encircling his snake-like, vertically slit eyes that extended down the sides to his nose. In addition, he lacked the reddish-brown hair that the kazekage was expected to have and had very long black hair instead. Kakashi said, Sani no Orochimaru, in a venomous tone. Kakashi insisted, what did you do with the kazekage? Orochimaru said, Kukuku who knows, before melting and turning into mud, which caused 6 ninjas to suddenly materialize in front of Gaara. Identifying the ninjas, Naruko exclaimed, Atonin. This time, however, they were wearing a brown sleeveless jacket over their clothes that hung down to their knees and had cuts on the sides from hip to knee. The Atonin attacked everyone except Naruko, separating her from the others and abandoning her with Gaara. When Naruko turned to face Gaara after hearing him scream once more, he saw him encasing himself in a ball of sand. Naruko turned to face the other members of the group and saw that Kakashi had already defeated the 3 ninjas who had pursued him and was now assisting Tamari and Kankuro. Naruko turned to face Sakura and Sasuke, who had just taken down the second after taking down the first. Kakashi had already assisted Kankuro and Tamari in defeating the previous 3 when Sakura and Sasuke defeated the third. When they saw the sphere of sand, they all gathered around Naruko. Tamari and Kankuro gasped and slowly retreated. Naruko could see how terrified they were. Naruko said, Oi, what's wrong? What's got you so afraid? That, Kankuro pointed to the sphere of sand and said in a flat voice. Given that Gaara was entirely encircled by sand, forming a perfect sphere, Naruko questioned, like I said, what is it? Tamari tragically stated, he is transforming and there is no stopping it now, in a voice that sounded as though she had given up on life. Naruko questioned, transforming into what? Something big and evil. The last time this happened he killed 30% of our village in one night. He didn't stop rampaging, destroying and killing everything within sight until our father stepped in and contained it until it calmed down, Kankuro explained. All of a sudden, Naruko was drawn into the seal. Kurama pointed to the piece of paper in the center of the cage and said, Kid, you'll need my assistance to remove the seal from the cage. Naruko looked up at Kurama and said, wait, I thought you said I needed the key and what's going on? Do you know what is happening with Gaara? I know, but if you remove the seal I'm sure with your help we can force the cage open. And yes, I know what is happening, Kurama replied with a head nod. Naruko nodded her head and said, all right, then let's try it. Can you tell me what's going on? Before inquiring about Gaara's situation. He is changing into his Biju state. He is like you. He contains Shukaku, the one-tailed Biju, Kurama said. Biju state? Naruko inquired, hoping that wasn't her initial thought. It is exactly what you were thinking. He is going to basically release Shukaku, Kurama remarked after hearing Naruko's idea. The only thing Naruko said was, "Fuck." Naruko leapt to the cage next to the piece of paper and held on. A second hand seized Naruko's hand as soon as it made contact with the paper, dragging her to the ground. After landing on her feet, Naruko turned to face the person who had taken her hand. Kurama asked, recognizing the person, "Yandaime? Yandaime?" Naruko asked again, glancing between this individual and Kurama. It appeared that this individual was in his early 20s. He had ocean blue eyes and short, spiky, yellow, blonde hair. He is dressed in the traditional blue Jonin outfit, complete with a blue headband bearing Konoha's symbol and a green utility vest. An open white jacket with no sleeves that falls just below his shins covers his ensemble. Naruko verified that this individual was, in fact, Konoha no Kiroi Senko, the Yandaime Hokage, by recognizing his face from the one on the Hokage monument. For Naruko, the Yandaime was the epitome of coolness and a role model. She was aware that he had rescued Konoha from Kurama's assault. When Naruko saw him, she was ecstatic for reasons she couldn't explain, and it wasn't because her role model was there. The Yandaime said, "Hey Naru-chan," with a gentle and joyful greeting. Naruko inquired, "How do you know my name?" The Yandaime retorted, "A father is supposed to know the name of his child." When Naruko suddenly realized what he had just said, his eyes widened. F.F.Fatha.E.er. Choked Naruko. "Yay, it's me, Naruko. I am your father." Naruko's father nodded. "Ga." The Yandaime bucked and grunted. Following her father's confirmation, she gave him a forceful punch to the stomach, causing him to collapse. Coughing a little, the Yandaime said, "Guess I partly dissevered that, and it got back up." The Yandaime was taken aback when Naruko pulled him into a tight embrace and used her tails to make it even tighter. When he heard her cry out in public, the Yandaime smiled softly. He gave her a hug in return and let her cry uncontrollably with joy. Kurama questioned, "Yandaime, Minato, why are you here?" "When I created the seal I made a failsafe should Naruko ever try to remove the seal," replied Minato. Without wanting to go into detail, Kurama remarked, "You really did think of everything, did you? I hope you know what's going on because we don't have much time." Minato thanked Kurama sincerely, saying, "Yes, I have been watching from inside the seal so I know everything up to now. And Kyuubi, thank you for looking after her. I didn't do it for you. I did it because unlike anyone else I have come across, she was the only one who didn't judge me and learned my side of the story. She was the only one who took the time to try and befriend me," Kurama responded. When Kurama said, "So anything I do for her and no one else," he was proud and defensive. Through her tears, Naruko whispered, "Kurama," while continuing to give her father her strongest embrace. Minato questioned her daughter, "Naruko, are you sure about opening the cage?" Still refusing to let her father go, Naruko responded, "I trust him with my life. I will do anything for him. He deserves to be free, not caged. He never asked for this, and neither did we." "I see. In that case, then by all means open the cage. Though both of you must know that Kurama can only be truly free by either extracting him or if he takes control of you and turns you into the new Kyuubi. Both result in the loss of your life," said Minato. "I know that. I never said anything to Naruko as I feel that I am truly free in here with her," Kurama remarked, gazing intently into Naruko's eyes. "Kurama-chan, thank you," Naruko said, breaking down in tears once more. Naruko sobbed for a few minutes before he got calm enough to talk. "2.san, how do we open the cage? I don't have the key to it," he said. "Should anything happen to the current holder of the original key or anything that prevents you from getting the key, I created another one and stored it in here. The one place one wouldn't think to look," said Minato. Very impressed, Kurama said, "You never cease to amaze me, so where in here is the key located?" "Beneath one of the tiles. Only I know which and only I can remove the seal that is protecting it," replied Minato. Minato said, "Honey, can you let go for a few seconds while I fetch the key?" While Naruko continued to give him her strongest embrace. When Naruko said, "No, take me with," she leapt to her feet and wrapped her legs around her father's waist. When Minato arrived at the tile directly in front of the cage, he said, "I need to get to the seal, just move a bit for me please." Reluctantly, Naruko let go of the hug and dropped her legs, but she remained near him, her tail still coiled around his waist. Minato dropped to his knees and cracked the tile. exposing a tiny scroll. Before biting his finger and smearing his blood all over the scroll, Minato opened it. A huge scroll that was somewhat smaller than Minato materialized with a puff of smoke. Minato revealed a key-shaped design when she unfolded the large scroll. There were numerous odd symbols in the key that Naruto was unable to recognize. "Just sign your name here in blood and the key will be yours," Minato said, gesturing to the sizable blank space overhead the key design. Before writing her name and leaving a bloody handprint beneath it, Naruto bit her finger, causing it to bleed. After closing itself, the scroll vanished in a cloud of smoke. Naruto noticed that the tile her father had previously broken had been repaired. The key returned to its original storage place. All you need to do now is remove the seal up there. Then send chakra to your fingertips and unlock the gate by turning the seal clockwise, that's as on your stomach. Minato clarified the procedure for opening the cage. Naruto nodded, then gave her father another quick hug and repeated several expressions of gratitude. "I wish I could stay, but I only have a small amount of chakra and releasing the key took most of it, so I will be leaving now." "Sorry Naruto, but I can't stay in this plane any longer," Minato responded with a tearful hug. "No, don't leave me," Naruto said, breaking down in tears once more. Minato tightened the hug and said, "Sorry, Naruto, but I don't have any chakra left to remain here." After learning that, Naruto made the decision to give it a shot and directed her chakra toward her father. Minato experienced an abrupt surge of chakra that surpassed his normal capacity limit. Minato pulled away from the embrace and turned to face himself. "Naruto, what did you do?" he asked. In between sobs, Naruto said, "You said you didn't have chakra, so I used mine to fill yours." Minato said, "Well, it seems to have worked. I have almost tripled the amount I normally had even when I was alive," as she was bursting with enthusiasm. Having to end the tender moment, Kurama remarked, "This is great and all, and now that Minato can stay a bit longer, but we have other things to deal with. Gaara's transformation is almost complete." After Minato took the piece of paper off the cage, Naruto nodded, pulled her vest and shirt up a little to reveal her midriff, and used her hand to turn the seal on her stomach. Before all the walls vanished, leaving an empty space, the cage exploded open. Both the floor and the water that covered it remained. Naruto had her back to Kurama and was grinning when Kurama approached her and sat behind her. Reality outside the seal. When Naruto abruptly shut down, everyone in the group, aside from Kakashi, became extremely confused. She was still alive and standing, but her eyes appeared somewhat lifeless as if she wasn't paying attention to anything. Sasuke shook Naruto several times and called out to her, but she didn't respond. Unaware of what was happening, Sasuke questioned, "Kakashi Sensei, what's wrong with Naruto?" Before Sasuke placed Naruto on his shoulder, Kakashi responded, "I have a hunch of what it is. Let's just back up a few meters. Sasuke, bring Naruto with you." The group retreated until they were about 10 meters from the sand sphere. With one of her arms wrapped around his shoulder and one of his hands holding her by the waist, Sasuke set Naruto down and held her. 2 minutes or so later, Naruto began to awaken. While 15 minutes had elapsed in the seal, only 2 minutes had elapsed in the real world. Naruto got to his feet, and Sasuke released him. When she was in front of everyone, Naruto halted her progress. Naruto turned to face Kakashi and said, "Kakashi Sensei, please fall back a bit. I will deal with this." "Naruto, I can't let you do this alone," Kakashi said as he approached Naruto. "Kakashi Sensei, please trust me. I wouldn't do this if I knew I couldn't," replied Naruto. Naruto replied, "Besides, I am the only one who can," grinning a little. Kakashi gave her a nod and trusted her. Kakashi gave the order for the others to retreat, separating them from Naruto by 30 meters. "Kakashi, why is Naruto out there alone? She will be killed. She can't stop him even with all the weight she can carry," Kankuro said blankly. Kakashi smiled and said, "No, she can. She is just like Gaara. So have faith in her, I know she can do it." When Temari and Kankuro learned that Naruto was exactly like their brother, their eyes widened. The sound of a loud poof interrupted their reply. All eyes turned to the sound, and they were completely taken aback by what they saw. A sand-based Biju with a single tail was standing there, its body covered in numerous blue stripes and spots. Its size, it was easily as large as the Hokage monument, was what most caught the eye. Shukaku glanced back down at Naruto as he calmly looked up at him. "Why? At last I am free, and look, my first victim," Shukaku roared, so loud that even the other members of the group had to cover their ears. Naruko's ears flattened on her head. From inside the seal, Kurama addressed Naruko, saying, "Naruko, align our chakra. It's time to remind this drunken crazed lunatic not to mess with me." After grinning, Naruko positioned her chakra in line with Kurama's. It appeared as though Naruko was wrapped in a cloak of chakra as red chakra began to envelop him. Naruko's tails were covered by the 5 tails that the chakra formed. Then all of a sudden, Naruko's skin turned red and black. Her eyes turned completely white as her pupils vanished. Naruko had her hands on the floor and was crouching low. She appeared to be an animal standing on all fours. Kakashi's eyes widened as he saw Naruko transform and sensed Kyuubi's chakra emanating from her. In contrast to the previous time, this chakra was warm and emanated happiness, protection, and a sense of security, rather than cold and filled with evil, malice, and hatred. Knowing what Naruko was going to change into, Kankuro and Temari nearly freaked out when she began to change. However, that was halted when they sensed that Naruko was releasing a secure and warm chakra. Sasuke noticed that this felt and looked very different from Naruko's typical shape. Shifting ability, so he asked, "Kakashi, this isn't Naruko's shape. Shifting ability, is it?" Before thinking out loud, Kakashi said, "Yes, it's not. I don't believe it. She is willingly releasing him and it feels like they are company ordinating with each other." At the same moment, Sakura and Sasuke asked, "Releasing him, what do you mean?" Naruko sent out a shockwave, but Kakashi remained silent. 4 more chakra tails formed as a result of the burst, for a total of 9. Around Naruko, a skeletal structure materialized out of thin air. It resembled a 4-legged, 9-tailed creature. As Naruko's size increased, muscles grew around his skeleton, covering him completely, leaving him a developing 9-tailed fox without skin or fur. As the muscles grew around Naruko, Sakura and Sasuke realized it was a fox. Temari and Kankuro both gasped when they realized who it was after seeing the quantity of tails. Kankuro practically yelled, "She is the container of him? How in the hell did you manage that?" Kankuro kept yelling, "And you letting her release him?" "Yes, she is, and you have nothing to fear. Unlike Gaara, she is friends with him, so he is on our side," replied Kakashi. As Sakura and Sasuke were becoming perplexed, Temari exclaimed, "Friends, how is that possible?" Sasuke shouted, wait, what do you mean contains him, releasing him and is friends with him?" "What you don't even know," when Kankuro said, "None of the kids that are 17 and younger know about this," Kakashi interrupted. Sasuke yelled, growing irritated, "Like I said, don't know about what?" "Gaara is the container of the one-tailed Biju Shukaku while Naruko is the container of the Biju Kyuubi no Yoko," Kakashi stated. "I was hoping that you would find out from Naruko herself on her own terms," Kakashi remarked pitifully. "Kyuubi?" asked Sakura and Sasuke. Naruko sent out another shockwave before Kakashi could finish. A giant fox, several sizes larger than Shukaku, was standing there when the dust settled. The fox's body was covered in orange-red fur. Behind the fox, 9 tails waved. The left eye is blood red, and the right eye is ocean blue, in contrast to its typical pair of red eyes. In her Biju state, Naruko glared at Shukaku as she stood tall and proud. A high-pitched voice said, "Why are you here, you damn furball?" Shukaku roared. Near the end, Naruko roared, using 2 voices. Her demon voice and Kurama's deep voice. "To put you back in your place, Shukaku. Or have you forgotten who is the strongest and that you need to respect your betters?" she said. "What makes you so high and mighty? Especially after you have now allied with a pathetic human," Shukaku retorted in a high-pitched voice. "She is no human. She is a better demon than you ever were. And it seems that you have forgotten what happened the last time we battled," Naruko said in both voices. According to Shukaku, no Han you can compare to a demon no matter who gave birth to them, he said angrily. Naruko shot back, "Why don't you come and prove that?" At that, Shukaku roared, "Why?" and then charged in. With a mix of anger and a pure desire to kill something, Shukaku charged in. Shukaku got close much faster than someone his size should, then repeatedly swiped with both paws without getting hit. Each swipe was easily avoided by Naruko, who was gradually pushed back and edged in the direction of the ninjas behind her. Angry, Shukaku halted his unrelenting attack and got ready to launch a jutsu at close range. Shukaku yelled, "Futon! Renkuden!" and then hurled a gigantic wind sphere at Naruko. When Shukaku unleashed the attack at point-blank range, Naruko realized she wouldn't be able to dodge in time and prepared for it by covering her front with her tails. Kakashi and the others had to leap back to avoid Naruko flattening them after the attack struck Naruko squarely in the face and pushed him back several meters. Naruko noticed Shukaku getting ready to fire another one while peering through her tails, which were still covering her. "Send one of your own. Dodging it will put the others in line with attack," Kurama informed Naruko as he swiftly recalled a jutsu technique. Both Shukaku and Naruko yelled, "Futon! Renkuden!" and then a huge ball of wind shot out. Sand and dust were thrown everywhere as a shockwave from the two attacks colliding head-on. Sand and wind were hurled in their direction, forcing Kakashi and the others to shield their eyes. When Naruko launched the jutsu into the air, she sprinted to her right and went around Shukaku to divert the group's attention. Shukaku was trying to flank Naruko when he appeared out of the dust. Shukaku trailed Naruko, but she halted when she had gone around to stand beside him. Naruko sent another sphere of wind in Shukaku's direction as he reached the flanking position. To counter the attack, Shukaku also sent one. The area exploded as the two attacks struck each other exactly as before, scattering sand and dust all over the place. Naruko charged at Shukaku, emerging from the dust at a high speed. Shukaku hit Naruko with several spheres. Between the nearly constant barrage of blows Shukaku was directing at her, Naruko zigzagged. Naruko sent a left hook toward Shukaku's face as soon as she got there. Just before the punch landed in front of his face, Shukaku jerked his head back. After lifting his left paw, Shukaku grabbed Naruko's arm and pushed it to the ground. Then he struck Naruko square in the face with a right punch. Naruko allowed the punch to turn her around by following it. Naruko spun around and struck Shukaku across the face with a few of her tails, taking advantage of the momentum of his punch. Shukaku skidded sideways away from Naruko as the tails made a strong contact. After skidding a few meters, Naruko came to a stop and prepared to charge Shukaku once more. After witnessing the interaction between Naruko and Shukaku, Sasuke exclaimed, This fight is on a whole new level," his eyes wide. Sakura remarked, "No human can fight like this," failing to see how any human could stand up to this. Kakashi stared at the fight without making any facial expressions. "Only a few have been able to. The Sandaime in his prime being one of them," he said. "How can we get Shukaku back into the seal, Kurama?" Naruko inquired. "I don't want to fight for too long because it will definitely start to heat up and ruin the area." "By forcing him, he must discover who is in charge here," Kurama retorted. "That's all well and good, but we must act fast because this battle will escalate and endanger the others." Naruko didn't want her friends to become collateral damage. Minato exclaimed, "I have a better idea." "Father?" Naruko inquired, partially oblivious to his presence. As he crawled into a ball, Minato said, "You forgot about me already, how sad," and pretended to be very sad about being forgotten. Before he told them his plan, Naruko and Kurama both started to perspire. As Kurama shook his head and referred to himself as a fool, Minato clarified, "If you look closely you will see Gaara on top on Shukaku's head. All you need to do is hit him awake and Shukaku will be forced to retreat back into the seal." Naruko grinned because she knew what had to be done. With her plan in place, she charged Shukaku as soon as she could see where Gaara was perched atop Shukaku's head, but she had to dodge Shukaku's barrage of blows once more. Shukaku sent a lot more attacks and was more accurate, so it took Naruko a little longer to get to him, but she eventually got close enough to land a few strikes. Naruko sent one herself a few times to cancel a few of the attacks that she couldn't dodge. Shukaku launched another attack at point-blank range as soon as Naruko was within striking distance, but Naruko was fast enough to throw a diagonal right uppercut this time, striking Shukaku square in the jaw and deflecting the blow just past her head and into the air. Immediately after completing the uppercut, which lifted Shukaku to his two legs, Naruko wrapped a tail around each of Shukaku's back legs and pulled them out from under him. Naruko used the remainder of her tails to wrap and tear apart Shukaku's front legs as he fell backwards. She then used her paws to forcefully push Shukaku's head to the ground, pinning it to the side before glaring directly into his eyes. "This child will not be tortured again, or else you will have to deal with me. You aren't going anywhere anytime soon, so try to get along," Naruko said in a dual voice with a growl, causing Shukaku to nod obediently. When Gaara woke up, Naruko woke him up by slapping him across the face with the tip of one of her tails, releasing Shukaku's limbs and causing him to sit on her hind legs, forcing him back into the seal and causing his Biju form to dissolve back into sand. After holding and shaking his head to try to clear his mind of the fog, Gaara slowly got to his feet and saw a huge orange-red fox sitting in front of him. Naruto looked down at Gaara with a comforting smile and a reassuring expression in her eyes. "Who are you? What took place?" Before everything went dark, Gaara's last memory was of a burning pain in his head. "I'm Naruto, and I'm just like you, even though you won't recognize me like this. What transpired was that I compelled Shukaku to return after he was freed. You shouldn't have to put up with him any longer," Naruto said. Gaara's eyes widened a little and then settled back down. "Are you that weird girl? Like you?" With a tone devoid of emotion, Gaara asked. Naruto said, "Yes, I am that girl, and I'm strange," her head marked with a tick. This time, Naruto's tone was calm as she said, "You understand what I mean when I say I am like you." Gaara watched his siblings, Kakashi, and his group emerge behind Naruto. "Gaara." Kankuro ran to Gaara and put a hand on his shoulder, and Temari sobbed as she ran to embrace him tightly. The fact that his sand didn't react as it usually did was the biggest surprise to Gaara, who had never been hugged by anyone before because sand attacked everyone, including his family, when they got too close. "Is that to say you're a?" Gaara inquired without completing his statement. Gaara said, "Yes, I am a Jinchuriki," and Naruto completed her. Sakura and Sasuke would have inquired about it, but they would have waited for the appropriate moment to do so. "I see the skepticism and doubt in your eyes. It wasn't always this way, even though I now have friends and am friends with him. For the first 5 years, I was on my own and had to fend for myself. Only a small percentage of my village still hates me for who I am," Naruto remarked. "How did you accomplish that? What makes you strong? Why do you have someone while I'm by myself?" Gaara inquired. "I always thought I would make a friend, so I never gave up. It's my affection for my pals. Not too long ago, someone told me that you only truly show your strength when it's for the people you care about," Naruto responded, and Gaara cast her gaze to the floor. "You are not alone, Gaara. You have me, and above all, the people in front of you are the ones you care about the most." With a glance at Temari and Kankuro, Naruto remarked, "Love them and defend them with your life." Gaara saw the genuine smile on both Kankuro's and Temari's faces as they looked at each other after Temari had stopped hugging him. Temari hugged Gaara once more before stepping back when she was done talking. "You were never alone, Gaara. We were always there for you no matter what. We will always love you," she said. "Love?" Gaara inquired. Gaara looked up at Naruto, who nodded her head as well, and looked down to see Naruto holding out a fist in front of him. Temari nodded, knowing that it was a word Gaara would not hear frequently and that it was never directed at him. Gaara glanced back up at Naruto and then down at the fist once more. Gaara made a fist and pressed it lightly against Naruto's fist, and her eyes widened before returning to normal and smiling slightly. All eyes widened for a few seconds as Naruto turned back into her human form in a burst of flame. Like chakra, her fist still attached to Gaara. Kankuro said, "Holy shit, that's cool," to himself. Naruto abruptly took a few sniffs, then turned her head in an arbitrary direction and took another few sniffs. Naruto pointed in a direction and remarked, "Kakashi. Sensei, I can smell the kazekage and it's not the strange smell that Auric. Something had. In addition to death, I can detect roughly 6 or 7 distinct scents." After providing additional details, Naruto inquired, "What should I do?" "He might not be dead yet. We'll meet you in Konoha after you go look into it," Kakashi remarked. Naruto created a bunshin that swiftly transformed into an eagle and flew off in the direction of the kazecage's location. "I mean full speed when I say Naruto. In 2 days, we should be in Konoha." Naruto nodded as Kakashi said, "When you find him, don't stop, just head for Konoha." Naruto swiftly took off all of her weights when Kakashi said, "Full speed," and by the time Kakashi had finished speaking, she had done so. Naruto nodded, then turned to face the kazekage before transforming into a fox and running away at full speed. After Naruto nodded, the only thing that the others saw was dust. When the dust settled, there was no sign of Naruto. Not even the dust trail that should have been left behind from her running, and everyone, with the exception of Kakashi, was shocked to see her go. "My goodness! How quick is she?" Kankuro gave a little shout. Kakashi remarked, "She is one of the fastest people in our village," as the group made their way to Konoha. With Naruto in a few seconds, Naruto arrived at the kazecage's location. There were 7 bodies at the bottom of a canyon, and the stench of the canyon nearly made Naruto throw up. No one else was around, at least above ground, according to the memories she received from the eagle she had previously sent. Naruto followed the faint heartbeat to its source and discovered the kazekage sitting against the canyon wall, barely conscious and breathing. After transforming into her human form, Naruto hurried to his side and noticed that there was a lot of blood on his clothing and underneath him. www.whui.ist. There, I'm Naruto. Please keep quiet. Don't talk. You need to conserve your energy. Before transforming into a fox and gently lifting him onto her back with a tail and securing him here with several tails, Naruto hurriedly said, I will get you to Konoha as soon as I can. After picking up the unconscious kazekage, Naruto leapt out of the canyon and ran as fast as she could to Konoha. Naruto had been running non-stop for a full day, and it wasn't until she was 19 hours into her run that she slowed down to about 75% of her maximum speed. Before she even reached the gates of Konoha, she transformed into her human form and carried the kazekage on her back for the remainder of the journey, which took a few minutes, proving that her training had paid off because she was hardly tired from running even after fighting Shukaku. The sun had just risen when she reached Konoha, and only a handful of people were awake, including the two green spandex weirdos Naruto sees nearly every morning. She left a bunchen to explain what had happened to the guards before hurriedly heading to the hospital. In an attempt to capture the Hokage's attention, Naruto releases a powerful burst of her chakra, which she repeats after a few blocks in the hopes that it will truly capture his attention and show him where she is going. This undoubtedly attracts the attention of a number of other ninjas in the area, and upon arriving, she witnesses the Hokage and two Anbu land in front of the hospital. On the way there, she witnesses a few other ninjas landing on nearby roofs to observe what was happening after experiencing multiple powerful chakra bursts. After getting the kazekage to take care of the medics, Naruto and the Hokage waited outside the emergency room for any updates after he saw someone on Naruto's back and called for the village's top medics to report to him. What happened, Naruto? Where are the other members of your team? The Hokage inquired in a somber yet compassionate manner. Orochimaru. Other than the possibility that he was ambushed, I have no idea what happened to the kazekage. The kazekage was with us for the first hour of the journey back, but I'm not sure when or how it happened. Kakashi. Sensei revealed that he was Orochimaru after he abruptly gave Gaara an injection and the kazekage peeled off his face. I located the true kazekage after some difficulties and brought him here. As for the rest of my team and the team from Suna, they will be here later this afternoon sometime, Naruto explained to the Hokage. The Hokage's eyes widened at the sound of that name, and he let out a long sigh of disappointment before shaking his head. I understand. The Hokage listened to Naruto's debriefing and said, when they return, I will get the full report and see what happens from there. Naruto wanted to talk to Gigi later, so he said, I have some things to say, but it can wait till later, half of it will be said during the report. When Naruto said it in a serious tone that she rarely uses, the Hokage nodded and wondered a little about what it might be. An hour later, the light above the door went out, indicating that they were done, and a lone female doctor left the room, forcing the Hokage and Naruto to get to their feet. For Naruto and the Hokage, the doctor's words, he is very lucky, an hour later and I'm sure we wouldn't make it, otherwise he is fine and stable, he just needs rest and should wake up around tomorrow sometime, were relief. The doctor said somewhat dejectedly, but with the damage he sustained to his lower spine, he may never walk again. Is it really that awful? The Hokage inquired. Yes, his spine has several fractures and was dislocated in a few places, and his entire pelvis was crushed. The doctor went on to say, we did what we could, but his walking days are definitely over. I see. We'll need to locate Tsunade Haim and ask her if she can help after the upcoming chunin exams. The Hokage said, I want him guarded 24/7 for the time being, and then he and Naruto left, leaving two Anbu guards to watch over the kazekage. Who is Tsunade Haim? Naruto inquired. The Hokage responded, one of the legendary Sannin, like Orochimaru but nowhere near as evil, as they departed the medical facility. Sannin, Naruto inquired, I heard Kakashi Sensei say that. When they were younger, they were my students. They were given the moniker Konoha no Densetsu no Sannin during the Second Shinobi War. Because they brought the Second World War to a close, they rose to fame as heroes, the Hokage explained. However, why would Orochimaru act in this manner? Naruto inquired. A person can be transformed by power, immortality, and death. The Hokage said in a sorrowful, hurt voice, he lost his way in his research in his search for this. She decided not to continue after hearing his tone because she was aware that it might trigger unpleasant memories. Towards the end of that afternoon, after hearing that Kakashi had returned with the team from Suna, Naruto had hurried to the Hokage's office, arriving just in time to witness Kakashi entering the office. Kakashi remarked, Naruto just in time, as Naruto entered and accompanied him. Everyone spent the next hour telling the Hokage everything that had happened from the beginning of the mission to its conclusion, including the training, Naruko's date of becoming human during the new moon, and her turning back the following day. They also mentioned that Gaara is the container of Shukaku and the battle that took place between Shukaku and Naruto, and that Orochimaru attacked immediately after Naruko changed back into a Hanyu. Naruko then went into greater detail about how she found the kazekage. The Hokage inquired, "So you turned into the Kyuubi and it wasn't your shape shifting ability," after learning that Naruko had transformed into the Kyuubi in order to battle Shukaku. "Yes, I did," Naruko said, as if she had something more to say. "I understand." The Hokage saw that Naruko was becoming a little apprehensive and was holding back something, so he said, "I can see you want to say something and I take it you have a reason for holding back." Naruko looked at her teammates, who nodded in understanding, thinking the Suna trio were a little perplexed but didn't press on. "Sorry guys, but Gigi, can this next bit please be in private? Kakashi can stay but the rest," she said. After nodding, the Hokage sat down, took a puff from his pipe, and sighed as he exhaled smoke from his mouth, and everyone except Kakashi and Naruko left the office. "So, what do you wish to say?" Both Kakashi and the Hokage were staring at Naruko when the Hokage asked. Naruko raised a hand and performed a half-Tora hand seal, creating a single cage bunchen that caused both Kakashi and the Hokage to raise an eyebrow. "I guess it's best I show you," Naruko said. Starting from the bottom and working its way up, the bunchen began to shift gradually. When the transformation was finished, Kakashi's single eye froze and went very wide, and the Hokage's pipe fell from his mouth as he also froze and gazed at the person in front of him with wide eyes. The Yondaime Hokage, who was standing next to Naruko, was grinning when he turned to face Kakashi. Minato remarked, "You have developed into a fine man, Kakashi," before turning to face the Hokage. "Well, it seems like you've taken back the seat." Guess Jiraiya was true to his word when he said he wouldn't become Hokage, Minato joked. When Kakashi and the Hokage said, "Yondaime sensei," at the same moment, Naruko heard Kakashi say sensei and mentally noted that she should inquire about it later. "How?" the Hokage inquired, unsure of how this could be. "I made a failsafe when I sealed Kyuubi in Naruko in case she ever tries to open the seal. Kyuubis and my souls were sealed inside Naruko," Minato explained. "Naruko is to blame for my presence here. What's keeping me here is her chakra," Minato added. "Even so, I can't stay here forever. Even with her chakra I can only stay here for 2 months max," Minato groaned. Minato nodded in agreement as the Hokage remarked, "I understand, but even if this is the last time, it's still great to see you again. Kakashi, you have my sincere gratitude for taking care of my daughter. She values you more than you realize. Protect her as any older brother would protect his younger sister because she views you as a brother and a precious brother. Be the sibling she's always desired." With a hand on Kakashi's shoulder, Minato stood in front of him and whispered, "Be the brother she needs you to be. The least I can do is this. I will not let you down the way I let them down. Naturally, I will always be there for her, and I will also be her brother," Kakashi remarked in an unusually joyful tone. Kakashi.ni, Naruko smiled and spoke softly. "You must let go of the past, Kakashi. Don't be too hard on yourself because it wasn't your fault. They will live on in your heart forever if you remember them." At the end, Minato turned to face Naruko and said to Kakashi, "It's time you look to the future, time to guide the new generation and pass on the Haino Ishi." Kakashi bowed and said, "It's great to see you again, sensei, but please excuse me, I need to get some fresh air," before leaving the room. Minato sighed and gave Naruko a gentle pat on the head, saying, "He still hasn't moved on, but in time I'm sure he will." The Hokage sighed, hoping Minato was correct. "When will the chunin exams be held?" Minato inquired. 5 days, replied the Hokage. Minato smiled and said, "Well Naruko, tomorrow your training starts," which caused Naruko to smile back. While Minato vanished into smoke, Naruko had to follow Kakashi's scent because he wasn't home and set out to find him to ask him a question that had been bothering her since Naho. A memorial stone close to Training Ground 7. After following Kakashi's scent, which led her out of the village, wondering what Kakashi was doing, Naruko noticed that the sun was only a few minutes away from casting its shadow. Sensing Kakashi's condition from her position, Naruko landed on a branch overlooking a small clearing in the forest and saw her standing in front of the memorial stone. Naruko then walked until she was standing beside him. Naruko broke the silence after the two had been silent for some time. Kakashi.ni, is this the reason you were consistently late? Naruko inquired since she could tell by his scent that he frequently visited this place. Yes, Kakashi said, it's the main reason. Would you like to discuss it? In the hopes that she could assist at some point, Naruko asked. Not wanting to discuss his past just yet, Kakashi said, no, not really, but in time if you still wish I shall tell you my story. Naruko shook her head and said, only tell me because to want to, not because you feel that you must. Promise me that at least, not wanting to push this on Kakashi. It's a promise, Kakashi remarked, grinning slightly. Kakashi. I have been wanting to ask you something for some time but haven't had the chance, Naruko murmured. Kakashi let out a hum. May I return to live with you? Without Naho, I'm feeling really alone. Naruko asked, and it's way too quiet for me, before quietly explaining that she missed the excitement of returning home and having a companion. You're welcome at any time. I never really understood why you moved back in the first place, Kakashi said, grinning at Naruko. Well, it looks like I'm the foolish one now. I suppose I'll settle in tomorrow. But you don't mind if I spend the night there? Naruko asked with a gentle smile after initially laughing. We never really intended for you to live alone in the first place, but a particular group of people made us do it. Choosing to give her little say in the matter, Kakashi remarked, to say that the Hokage and I were unimpressed is putting it lightly. Thank you, Naruko said quietly as Kakashi smiled at her. The following morning, Naruko moved her belongings to Kakashi's house and attempted to sell the apartment the Hokage had given her, but given who she was, it might take some time before someone had the courage to purchase it. Sasuke and Naruko, being Sasuke and Naruko, trained anyhow, and were even taken aback when Sakura arrived and joined them at their regular training location. Kakashi stated that Team 7 could take the day off to rest before they began training the following day. Naruko kept her word and taught Sakura how to land silently during that train. She also made Sakura practice her flexibility by having her perform various stretches for longer than usual. This will take time and a lot of training, Naruko said, adding that Sakura frequently stretched in rather awkward and suggestive positions, making her blush and occasionally wondering if Naruko was trying to pull something. During the afternoon, Naruko spent time being trained by her father. Sakura was instructed to perform these stretches both before and after training, to run every morning first thing in the morning, and to note that running during training does not count. In addition to learning how to perform the Shunshin no Jutsu, Naruko was also trained with Kurama and learned how to better control her Biju form thanks to her bunshins. Naruko was instructed to study a set of books on Fuin Jutsu. Naruko primarily trained on summoning and controlling individual limbs without entering full Biju mode, while Kurama worked on controlling the various forms she could use, 3 total, she was informed. To the relief of his children, Naruko and the Hokage, the kazekage awoke the following day and announced that the Orochimaru planned to use his village to help Otogaku attack Konoha during the last round of the chunin exams, with Gaara acting as the trigger. The Hokage, Shukaku, and Ibiki made plans and preparations for the impending invasion, called a council meeting, and told the ninjas who were currently on mission to complete their mission as soon as possible and return to Konoha. For the next 2 days, Team 7 put in a lot of work in preparation for the impending chunin exams. Rather than practicing her lightning seishutsu henka, Naruko focused on mastering her Biju form. She went one step further and was able to transform any part of her body into Kurama whenever she wanted to before beginning to work on something else in private from her team in the afternoon. In order to ensure that Kakashi confiscated their weights, he told them at the end of the second day that they should not train at all for the next 2 days, especially the second day since that is when the chunin exam begins. Kakashi knew that Naruko and Sasuke would want to train. 2 days remain until exams, with the second day coming to an end. Sasuke yelled, "Hey Naru-chan, wait up," as he hurried alongside Naruko. "Hey, how are you, Sasuke-kun?" Naruko paused and turned to face the approaching Uchiha before asking, "So, do you want to join me for a date tomorrow?" Sasuke smiled as he asked. "Why? Yes, sure, I would love to," Naruko said cheerfully, blushing slightly. Sasuke set the time and said, "Great, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning at 9. We went on a date, and Naruko informed Sasuke that she had moved in with Kakashi. Sasuke remarked, "That explains why your apartment was empty," recalling that when he had arrived this morning to wait for Naruko, he had discovered her apartment deserted. Sasuke said, "So I will see you tomorrow at 9, and then he hurried away. Naruko saw Kakashi sitting on the couch reading, but this time it was not his orange prescribed book. Instead, He had several scrolls scattered around him as he read the one in his hand. Naruko was beaming as she walked home, eager for tomorrow. Before entering the house, Naruko removed her sandals, leaving her barefoot, and walked to the couch Kakashi was sitting against on the floor. Naruko crossed her legs and sat down gently on the couch, looking over Kakashi's shoulder to see what he was doing. "What are you reading this time, Kakashi?" Naruko inquired. "Just a little bit of studying here and there. I'm also looking for additional material to teach you all." Kakashi concluded with a complaint. "It's not easy when you learn everything in a few months instead of a year that it's supposed to take." Naruko stated, "We are just that awesome, though I hope you have some things for Sakura more so than us," being aware that Sakura feels as though she is lagging behind. It's understandable why she feels abandoned. When she compares herself to you and Sasuke, her lack of chakra makes her feel like she is up against titans, even though she is incredibly talented and has the best chakra control I have seen since Tsunade. Kakashi remarked. Kakashi turned to face Naruko, who was seated on the couch behind him, and remarked, "But because of you, she doesn't feel as intimidated and wants to try her hardest to catch up." Naruko smiled back at Kakashi and said, "I have been helping where I can, and I did what I could to help." "So, what date is it?" Kakashi smiled and asked, his eyes brightening. "How do you know, HH?" With a slight blush, Naruko stammered out the question. Kakashi chuckled and remarked, "I didn't know until you walked in, it's written all over your face." "Is it truly that clear?" Naruko inquired, a little ashamed. "Well, it's clear that something is making you happy. When is the date, then?" Kakashi rephrased his question after saying this. Tomorrow at 9, Naruko uttered, averting his eyes from Kakashi. "Don't you think that's a little late?" At the conclusion, Kakashi smiled and said, "Just don't get to anything too naughty." San, a pervert." Naruko hid her head in her knees and yelled, flushed. Naruko whispered, "And it's in the morning," while keeping her face hidden. "Well," Kakashi said as he stood up, "have fun and hope it goes well." "Well, I'm going to bed. Good night, Naru-chan. I'm a little tired and would like to go to sleep, so please try to keep your voice down tonight," Kakashi said as he left the room. Kakashi quickly vanished into his room, not wanting to know what would happen next, after Naruko's face turned a deep shade of red before hurling a pillow at him and concealing her face once more out of embarrassment. Kakashi ducked under the flying pillow, stating that it might have hurt if it had actually hit him. The following morning, despite being a little too excited to sleep, Naruko had a good night's sleep after waking up early, taking a long, warm bath, and then becoming a little anxious about what to wear. Keeping her hair down as she had on the previous date, Naruko hoped it would be similar to the last time she wore her regular clothes, but without her vest and weights, which Kakashi had taken away from her to prevent her from training. When the long-awaited knock finally came, Naruko walked to the door and opened it with a broad smile on her face after sitting anxiously in silence on the couch for 30 minutes. Sasuke said, "Morning Naru-chan," with joy. Naruko said, "Sasuke-kun," with joy. Sasuke held out his arm and said, "Shall we get going? There is quite a bit to do." The two walked around the village between the various stores before stopping at a clothes store, where Naruko noticed the rather expensive clothes and turned to Sasuke in confusion. Naruko was so excited for her date that she gladly linked her arm with Sasuke and walked with him. Sasuke entered the store and said, "We need to get you something formal for the reservation I booked for lunch." Sasuke sensed Naruko's anxiety as she entered the store and drew her in to reassure her. When Sasuke said, "You don't have to worry, I made sure to find a place that you could go to without any hassle," Naruko found peace. When Sasuke mentioned that he made the effort to locate a location knowing her issue with the majority of the stores, Naruko took it very personally. "Hello, how may I be of assistance to you?" From behind the counter, a woman inquired. Naruko noticed that she didn't actually have the same expression that the others did, which made her smile a little. "Could you please help her find something for the lunch we have at Riverside Lodge?" asked Sasuke. "Oh my, you're going to a really interesting place." Before leading Naruko to a section of the store filled with various kimonos, dresses, and other items that Naruko had never seen before, the woman said, "I'll make sure she has something for the occasion." Before leaving the store, Sasuke yelled that he would return in roughly 10 minutes. An hour later, Naruko had changed into a dress that she liked after Sasuke insisted on buying it for her. Sasuke gasped silently and blushed deeply as Naruko left the changing room, and Naruko blushed as well, seeing Sasuke wearing a black tuxedo. "Wow, was Sasuke's stunned response. Naruko's hair is down, and she's wearing a black strapless dress that flatters her figure and curves and does little to cover up her well-proportioned breasts, which display a good amount of cleavage. In addition to wearing black gloves that reach to the middle of her biceps and a pair of not.so high heels, Naruko's dress was a little tight around her legs, reaching her ankles, but still allowing you to occasionally see the shape of her legs as the dress waves around her legs. Sasuke whispered, "You're really beautiful," praising Naruko's appearance. Naruko blushed and said, "Thank you, you're rather handsome yourself," before complimenting him in return. After blushing, Sasuke extended his arm once more, and Naruko happily wrapped her arm around it. The two left the store, headed out, and reached their reservation on time, with Naruko gasping at their surroundings. "This is where we're having lunch?" Naruko inquired. Naruko remarked, "This is like the best place in Konoha," knowing from all the conversations and rumors that this is the best restaurant in the area. "Yep, we are. Hope you enjoy it here," Sasuke began as he and Naruko entered the restaurant. While discussing the impending chunin exams, what they believe they will be tested on, and how, the two enjoyed a delicious meal. Later, in the desert, they turned the conversation to themselves and some of their previous missions. Following lunch, Sasuke took Naruko to see a new Kazehana Koyuki film, which they both enjoyed, though they both laughed a little at the poorly executed ninjutsus they used. Following the film, they strolled through the park, chatting, laughing, and spending some time together before realizing that dusk was almost upon them. "Whoa, sunset is almost here." Gazing at the slowly developing orange horizon, Sasuke remarked, "When you are having fun, time truly does fly." After saying, "Hey Sasuke, follow me, I want to show you something," Naruko escorted Sasuke to a location. The Hokage Monument Summit. Naruko grinned before releasing his arm and leaping down the monument and landing on top of the Yondaime Hokage's head. After a while, they reached the summit of the Hokage Monument that overlooked the village, and Sasuke gasped at the sight. Sasuke was a little taken aback by the leap, but he quickly followed Naruko and landed next to her. Naruko sat down, hugging her knees and gazing out at the scenery, while Sasuke sat beside her and truly enjoyed it. Sasuke glanced over the village as the sun was setting in front of the main entrance, the sky a riot of orange and red, with a glimmer of light piercing the forest in front of the village. Sasuke said, "I never knew about this place," and he thought the view was stunning. "It's amazing," said Sasuke. "It's incredible. Long ago, soon after I was expelled from the orphanage, I discovered this location." After agreeing, Naruko explained how she discovered the location and added, "I've been coming here every night ever since. I often come here when I need to escape," Naruko remarked, grinning a little. Sasuke began to say, "Naruko, I don't want," as if he should encroach on her territory. Naruko used a tail to prevent Sasuke from leaving. "No, please, I want to share it with you, it's the one place I feel safe and at peace," Naruko said. Naruko wrapped several tails around Sasuke's waist as he sat back. After saying, "I thank you for sharing this with me," Sasuke moved slightly to meet Naruko's eyes. Naruko's face blushed slightly as she returned his gaze. "It must have been a difficult choice for you to confide in me in this way." "I'm so glad Naruko agreed to share a place like this with me," Sasuke said quietly. Naruko hummed, "HMMMPH," while shaking her head. Naruko whispered, "I wanted to, it really wasn't hard for me to decide, something just told me to," and smiled. When Naruko saw Sasuke's face so close to her, she blushed deeply, and then they leaned forward, their lips meeting halfway as Sasuke put his hand on her cheek and made her feel as though she could melt as the passionate kiss grew deeper. Sasuke melted and settled into the tails wrapping all over his body as Naruko melted into the kiss and wrapped her arms around his neck, trying to draw him in. As they both felt their bodies warming up against one another, Sasuke raised his other hand and put it on her other cheek, gently cupping her face and enjoying the feel of her warm, soft lips. Naruko's face was hot and flushed from the breath taking kiss, and they had no idea how long they had been kissing, only that they enjoyed every second of it before having to pull back to get a breath of air. Sasuke's eyes stayed closed, hoping that when he opened them, it wasn't all a dream, and Naruko stayed stunned for a few seconds before waking up. When he opened his eyes, he met Naruko's eyes directly. Sasuke smiled, drawing her head closer to his, reassuring her that he was here to stay, and let out a breath he had been holding, relieved that it was all real and that he could still feel Naruko's tails around him, holding him in fear that he might leave her. When he smiled and his eyes were full of passion, warmth, and life. Naruko felt her heart skip a beat. She smiled back, hoping for the best, and pushed Sasuke over a little as she planted another kiss. Sasuke was a little taken aback by the kiss, but he quickly gave it back, allowing Naruko to push him back until he was lying with his back to the monument and Naruko on top of him. He then used his tongue to repeatedly rub it across her lips. Not wanting to be outdone, Naruko wrestled with Sasuke's tongue and prevailed, allowing her to explore his mouth. Naruko opened her mouth and let his tongue explore her mouth and tongue, letting out a cute, soft moan at the pleasure. Both of them groaned as they broke the kiss to catch their breath. Naruko let out an exhausted, "Wow," groan. That was, Naruko began and continued. Sasuke completed the word, "Amazing," for her. Naruko grinned as she nestled into his chest, her tails now encircling both of them, and Sasuke held her close, relishing the warmth of her body. They stayed that way for a long time, relishing the intimacy and companionship. Unfortunately, it came to an end when Sasuke gently woke Naruko from her slumber. Sasuke sat up and said, "We should get going," but Naruko stayed against his chest, unwilling to move just yet. After grinning and giving her a gentle head rub, Sasuke allowed her to remain in that position for a few more minutes after hearing her purr. Naruko fell asleep with a big smile on her face, and Sasuke picked her up slowly and carefully so as not to wake her. In an attempt to prolong the moment, Sasuke walked slowly until he arrived at Kakashi's house. Tragically, he carried her, holding her close to him, and jumped down the monument and took her home. Naruko kept her arms around his neck and her tails around him as Sasuke gently roused her and let her stand up, leaning in to give him another long kiss before stepping back to catch her breath. Sasuke-kun, thank you. With her head resting on his chest, Naruko remarked quietly, "I couldn't have asked for a better time." Sasuke gently put his arms around her waist and uttered, "I wouldn't have it any other way." "So are we officially, or do you still want some more time?" Sasuke inquired. "Time with you is the only thing I need more of. And indeed, we are unquestionably official," Naruko answered. Sasuke said, "Well, you better get used to spending time with me because I am not letting you go," as he let go of the embrace. "I can definitely get used to it," Naruko remarked, grinning cheekily. Naruko said, "Good night Sasuke-kun," and gave him a quick kiss. Ask said, "Night Naru-chan," and gave Naruko a quick kiss on the lips. After releasing Sasuke from her tails, Naruko entered her home, shut the door, and rested her back against the door, suppressing the urge to squeal like a schoolgirl. Feeling happier than ever before, Naruko went to bed with a huge smile on her face. With an exuberant HMMMPH, Naruko opened her eyes. This morning, Naruko took a little longer to get ready. Naruko noticed Kakashi sitting on the couch reading a scroll once more as she left the room, her tails joyfully waving from side to side and a little bounce in her step. Naruko cheerfully said, "Ohayo Kakashi." As he passed Kakashi to grab a bite to eat. Kakashi looked up at Naruko and said, "Ohayo, I assume the date went well." "Perfect," Naruko sighed happily as she sat beside Kakashi, holding a bowl of cereal. While continuing to read the scroll, Kakashi questioned, "That good huh?" Naruko whispered, "I've never felt like this before, it feels," before attempting to come up with a word to express her feelings. Kakashi completes the sentence for her, "Indescribable." "Yeah, it's indescribable," gives Naruko a joyful sigh. "I told Sakura and left a note for Sasuke telling them that team meeting is at 10 today," Kakashi told Naruko. Unaware of how this works, Naruko inquired, "At 10? When does the chunin exam start? It's supposed to be today, right?" Kakashi says, "Yes, but it only starts at 3 this afternoon," as he gets up from the couch. "So late?" asked Naruko, who was taken aback that this kind of thing began so late. Kakashi said, "I'll meet you at 10. I have some place I need to be, before leaving. It normally starts at that time." Sasuke was waiting for Naruko at the bottom of the stairs when she descended a short while later. When Naruko saw him, she approached Sasuke with a radiant smile. Naruko said, "Ohayo Sasuke-kun," with joy. In response, Sasuke gave Naruko a breath-taking kiss while gently cupping her face. Naruko's eyes widened at the unexpected kiss, then she wrapped a tail around Sasuke, closed her eyes, and melted into the kiss. Sasuke said, "Ohayo," as he broke the kiss. With a slight smile on her face, Naruko gazed intently into Sasuke's eyes after flattening her eyes open. Naruko quietly uttered, "Wow, I can get used to that," still a little stunned by the kiss. We still have an hour till team meeting, do you want to do anything? Asked Sasuke. With a, just relax at the training ground, Naruto replied. Sasuke responds, sure, then grabs Naruto's hand and leaves for the training area. When Sasuke took Naruto's hand, she blushed slightly. Naruto drew Sasuke nearer to her by tying a few more tails around him with the one she still had on him. Naruto turned to face Sasuke and said, I hope I didn't make you wait too long, I did take a bit longer to get ready this morning, instead. Shaking his head, Sasuke responds, no, I was a little late myself. Naruto teased, why did you go to the wrong house again? Sasuke tries to defend himself by saying, haha, I just overslept a bit. With a slightly sensual tone, Naruto asks, couldn't stop dreaming about me. Yep, Sasuke responds with ease, causing Naruto to laugh and blush slightly in response to Sasuke's directness. Practice Area 7. Naruto rested her head on Sasuke's shoulder as he sat beneath a tree. When Sakura arrived for the team meeting, they had already spent roughly 30 minutes there simply chatting and enjoying each other's company. Although Sakura had come to terms with the possibility that she would never be able to win Sasuke, she still harbored a tiny bit of jealousy. She didn't have anyone to love or be loved by, which was the main cause of her jealousy. Sakura walked with a small, sincere smile, glad that Naruto had found someone who understood how difficult her life had been. Sakura fervently hoped she would meet someone of her own. Sakura smirked as she observed the two cuddling and said, you two seem a lot closer today. Did anything happen yesterday? Naruto cheerfully replied, yeah, we went on a date yesterday, while glancing at Sasuke. Sakura leaned in to listen, wanting to hear more. And, don't leave me hanging here, share some details here, she said. Naruto began, he bought me a beautiful dress first, and then he took me to Riverside Lodge for lunch. Sakura looked at Sasuke and exclaimed, Riverside Lodge. But that's like the best place to go, how did you get a reservation there? I asked the owner for a favor because he knows me well and was my dad's best friend and best man, Sasuke said quietly. Sakura was astonished that Sasuke knew someone of that caliber and somewhat envious that she wasn't the one seeing Sasuke. You know the owner. Wow, that's just wow, she said. Given that she won't be visiting a location like that anytime soon, Sakura inquired, so are they as good as everyone says? Naruto said, I only have one place to compare with, but they did have really amazing food, but I was sad that they didn't have ramen, with a pout at the end. Sakura deadpanned, ramen, really, ramen, pointing out that although she was aware of Naruto's fondness for the dish, this was absurd. You go to the best restaurant around and you want ramen, Sakura continued, deadpanning at Naruto. Sakura started to perspire at Naruto when he said, no, I didn't want ramen, I was just sad that they didn't offer ramen, as if it were no big deal. Sakura wanted to return to the subject of Naruto's date, so she asked, aside from your ramen addiction, what else did you do? We watched the new movie Fuin Heim. It was a good movie but the ninja adaptations were really funny, Naruto remarked, laughing as she finished. Sakura repeated, and what else, in her question. Naruto put her head back on Sasuke's shoulder and remarked, we strolled through the park until dusk, when I showed Sasuke the best view in the village. Sakura declares, I know there is more, undoubtedly aware of what transpired. Naruto whispered, I had my first kiss, blushing. Ah, how cute, Sakura exclaimed, causing Naruto to blush more intensely and avoid making eye contact. Kakashi said, so that's what you meant by perfect, as he suddenly materialized. Sakura was a little alarmed by his unexpected appearance, while Naruto exclaimed, Kakashi.ni. With embarrassment. Kakashi handed out the forms and vanished in a whirl of leaves. So here are the forms for the chunin exam. If you wish to enter, write your name and hand in the forms to room 301 at the academy by 3 this afternoon. Only you can decide if you want to enter, she said. How do you anticipate the exam to go? Sakura inquired. Sasuke and I think that it might be something similar to the academy and genin test, Naruto replied. We'll have to wait and see. Sakura, are you going to enter? Replied Sasuke. Yay, I feel like I can do it. But I will be honest, if Kakashi hadn't trained us like he did I don't think I would have entered, Sakura responded. Naruto stood up and said, I know you can do it, Sakura, and Sasuke and Sakura followed shortly after. Naruto put her hand face down in the center of them and said, guys, let's make a promise. No matter what happens, we will always be a team. So let's do this together as a team. Saying, Team 7, Sasuke put his hand over Naruto's. Saying, Team 7, Sakura put her hand over Sasuke's. Team 7, concluded Naruto. Team 7 spent the next 2 hours in the forest brainstorming potential outcomes and how they would respond to them collectively. They also planned for when they would have to fight, which they knew would happen. Naruto recommended that they get there early so they can observe the other guests and know who to watch out for. Team 7 then made their way to the academy. A short distance from the academy. A voice yelled, "Boss!" Team 7's attention was drawn to the voice. When Naruto saw who it was, he asked, "Konohamaru." Konohamaru exclaimed, "Boss, I did it. I ran 5 laps around the village," with excitement. A girl his age said, "Hey, don't forget us, we did it as well," beside him. Another boy beside Konohamaru said, "Yay, so did I," in a rather monotone tone. "Oh, and who you two?" Naruto asked, glancing between Konohamaru's new pals. "Udon," replied the boy. "Moegi," said the girl. "With a collective, and we are the Konohamaru Corps," they declared. "Konohamaru Corps, so you can run 5 laps around the village," replied Naruto. "Naru-chan, who are these kids?" asked Sasuke, and Sakura followed suit. Konohamaru questioned, "Naru-chan. Yo boss, who is this?" "These two are my teammates Sakura and Sasuke.kun. Sasuke.kun. Sakura, this Konohamaru, he wanted me to train him, so I said that until he can ran 5 laps around the village I won't train him. Though these two seem to have joined in on this," Naruto said as they were introduced to one another. Konohamaru said, "Sasuke.kun. Boss is here, you know." Before he paused and revealed his pinky. With pride, Naruto clung to Sasuke's arm as he blushed slightly. "Yes he is," Naruto said. "Ah," Moegi said softly, blushing slightly. After inspecting Sasuke, Konohamaru remarked, "Well, you don't seem like much." Moegi said softly, "I think he's cute," which caused Konohamaru to roll his eyes. Sasuke stated bluntly, "Listen, kid, I don't care what you think of me." Yay, so boss train us." Konohamaru waved his hand dismissively at Sasuke before insisting that Naruto train him. The dismissal was so casual that Sasuke's eye twitched. Naruto patted Hamaru-chan's head affectionately and said, "Oh, I will train you, okay, but sorry, it's the chunin exam now, so you will have to wait until after the exam." After blushing slightly at the affection and nickname, Konohamaru nodded. Naruto said, "I can't train you right now, but for the time being, double the laps around the village," so they had something to do. "Yes boss." Each of the 3 saluted. "Good luck, boss. Show them what you're made of," Konohamaru said, raising his thumb. Naruto added, "You bet I will," while raising her thumb. Before leaving, Konohamaru and his group bid farewell. From behind Team 7, a new female voice asked, "Are we already practicing to be a Jonin instructor?" When Team 7 turned around, they saw their new Suna friends approaching. Naruto exclaimed, "Gaara, Tamari, cat guy, glad to see them." Kankuro grumbled, "Hey, you know, I have a name, and it's not cat guy," to which Naruto simply stuck her tongue out in jest. With some naive optimism, Tamari said, "Please don't tell me you are also entering the exam," as the group made their way to the academy. "You bet I am," said Naruto, grinning. Tamari muttered something about this not being fair and simply shook her head. Naruto said to Gaara, "Gaara, how have you been? You getting along with Shukaku?" "I have been much happier thanks to you. I don't know if we are getting along, but he is talking and not trying to drive me mad," replied Gaara. "That's good to hear, and it will only get better from here, just don't give up," Naruto responded. "It's good that you two are talking. Just remember he is just like any other living being with emotions and thoughts of his own. Deep down he is like us, lonely, judged and mistreated for something out of his control, so you should also keep that in mind," Naruto said as she placed a hand on Gaara's. Gaara reflects on Naruto's words and responds, "I see. Thanks for that, I will be sure to remember it the next time we talk." When they arrived at the academy's entrance, Naruto said, "We're going to stay here and see who else is taking this exam. We'll meet you inside." Gaara says, "Well then, see you soon," before he and his siblings head into the academy. Team 7 sat in a nearby tree for the next 2 hours, noting every genin that was taking the test. They observe a few teams, including one of Otogakure, which made Naruto very angry. Sakura, a member of another Omegakure team, recalled the symbol she had seen. Hinata, Shino, and Kiba were also entering, which pleased Naruto. The others were simply disregarded because they didn't seem noteworthy or very good. Naruto half expected Shikamaru to not enter at all, but he wasn't shocked to see Team Asuma arrive as late as they did. However, Naruto was compelled to enter because he knew his mother. Naruto noticed another Konoha team enter, and this time, in contrast to the others, she took notice. Although they appeared to be identical except for the fact that one was an adult and the other was a child about a year older than Naruto, she was certain that the person in green was the one she sees most mornings with his father or brother. Sasuke raised an eyebrow at Naruto when he decided that they would follow them. After Naruto leapt from the tree, Sasuke questioned, "Who has your attention in this group? They don't seem like much." Naruto responded, "The kid in green. I see him most mornings while I go out for my daily hunt or run," after Sakura herself fell to the ground. Naruto says, "He trains hard, really hard every morning like I do, so make sure to keep an eye out for him," as he enters the academy. Team 7 noticed that there was a genjutsu up there when they turned the corner on the second floor and saw room 301. Naruto saw the child in green get a hard punch that knocked him to the ground as he walked closer. Knowing that Sasuke would probably mention the genjutsu, Naruto said, "Sasuke, don't say anything about the genjutsu, it might thin things out a bit," to which Sasuke nodded. "You don't need to punch him like that," the green child female teammate said as she assisted him in standing up. "No, I don't, but I felt like it," one of the two men who were watching the door said. They were perhaps a little older than Naruto. "You're mean, please just let us through," she graciously requests. Speaking, the guard reached out and swung his hand, striking the girl across the face. Between the girl and the guard, Naruto disappeared and then resurfaced, using her right hand to grasp the guard's arm. When Naruto appeared out of nowhere, everyone's eyes went wide. Both the girl and the guard were shocked, but the guard was more shocked by how easily Naruto had halted his attack. Naruto growled and remarked, "It's not polite to hit a girl you know, especially one that is basically your comrade." After lowering himself onto one of his hands, the second guard turned and kicked Naruto in the head. Naruto started to block it, but she changed her mind when she saw the child in green take her place. Alongside Naruto, the child in green also materialized out of nowhere and used one hand to stop the kick. Just a few moments ago, this child was being pushed around like a rag doll, so this surprised many people once more. He can block a kick like that with strength and speed. Analyzing the green kid, Naruto concluded that it was wise to keep an eye on him. Sasuke agreed with Naruto that they should watch out for him because he's almost as fast as Naruto. When the green kid said, "Thank you for defending my team. It's only right I repay the same kindness," Naruto smiled at his demeanor. "And I agree with her, it's rude to strike a girl, let alone your own ally," the child replied. The guard stood back up after his leg was released and the other guard dropped his hand. "Seems you have proven yourself worthy, fine, we will let you through," he said. "No need, this isn't the correct room," Naruto said quietly, so that only the green kid and his teammates and the guards could hear. The guard remarked, "So you noticed?" Naruto said softly so the guards could hear, "Yay, including your henge," which caused their eyes to widen. Naruto said, "I should go now," as she left to join her teammates. It wasn't the green kids or the girls who said, "Hey, you wait, what are your names?" When Team 7 turned around, they saw the girl and child in green, as well as the person who had spoken. Naruto was reminded of Hinata by the speaker, a boy about a year older than Naruto, who had long brown hair and white, pale eyes. The boy is dressed in a light brown short-sleeved shirt with a high collar, brown short pants, blue shinobi sandals, and a Konoha headband. He has bandages all over his left arm and leg. The brown hair of the girl on his left is secured in two buns on either side of her head. She is dressed in blue shinobi sandals, dark green pants that fall to her shins, and a pink sleeveless shirt. The first boy's right is the child in green. His hair is bobbed and black, with a white, glossy band around the top of his head. He's dressed in a full-body green spandex, blue shinobi sandals, and a blue Konoha headband as a belt. From his hands, knuckles to his elbows, both of his arms are wrapped in bandages. His legs, from his knees to his sandals, are covered in orange shin guards. Sasuke disliked the Hyuga's attitude and asked, "Aren't you supposed to give your name before you ask someone else's name?" The Hyuga inquired, "You guys are a bunch of rookies, right? How old are you?" Sasuke responds, "I don't have to answer you. Please forgive my teammates' youthful kindness. My name is Rock Lee and this is 1010 and Hyuga Neji," said the young man in green. Naruko wrapped her tail around Sasuke's waist and said, I'm Uzumaki Naruko. This is Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sakura. It's a pleasure to meet you, Lee.san. Lee stated, ah yes Sakura.san. Let's go out together, I will protect you with my life, while grinning and holding up his thumb. His teeth were gleaming. Sakura deadpanned, no way, you're lame, which made Lee feel depressed. Naruko exclaimed, Sakura that was harsh, as he perspired at the severe rejection. Saying, Sasuke, I challenge you to a spar, Lee put Sasuke to the test. Ten said, Lee, fine whatever we will wait for you by room 301, and he and Neji left. Sasuke responded, sure, a little taken aback by the unexpected challenge. Lee remarked, your youthfulness shines bright, before assuming a position. As he assumed a stance, Sasuke questioned, wait you mean now? Lee says, yes, I want to spar now, and nods. Sorry Lee.san but it's the exam in a few minutes there is no time. After the exam I will take you on your challenge, Sasuke apologizes. Lee says, I see. I wish to challenge you and test myself, as he lets go of his position. Sasuke takes Naruko's hand and says, fight her if you truly want to challenge yourself. She is much stronger than I am. Lee said, then I wish to test your youthfulness too, as he turned to face Naruko. Naruko smiled and said, oh I will show you my youthfulness. Before Lee sprinted away. The door to room 301. Kakashi was standing in front of room 301 when Team 7 arrived at the door. Kakashi said, I had no doubt all three of you would come, go on good luck. Be sure to win me some money, and then vanished in a whirlpool of leaves. Okay, Sakura asked, a little perplexed. Naruko twitched her eye and asked, did he just place a bet on us? Looks like it, Sasuke said, a little perplexed as well, but he dismissed it. When Naruko and her team entered the room after opening the door, they noticed that it was crowded. Naruko put a hand on Sakura's shoulder to reassure her because she could tell she was feeling threatened by everyone watching them. Sakura smiled gratefully at Naruko as she turned to face her. Sakura's shoulder was gently squeezed by Naruko, who smiled back. A voice on their right said, looks like we aren't the only rookies here, which prompted Team 7 to investigate. Naruko squealed, Hinata, and then ran to embrace Hinata, tying her tails around her. Naruko, Hinata said, glad to see Naruko, whom she considers to be her best friend, and returned the hug. Kiba asked, Naruko, since when did you get into cosplay? After noticing Naruko's ears and tails, which she thought were pretty sexy. Shino answered simply, Kiba, I don't think she is into cosplay. Why? Because they are real and she had them when I first met her in the academy. A voice that Naruko didn't recognize said, he is right Kiba, they're real. I can tell. Naruko turned to it, and it came from Kiba, leaving her completely perplexed. Kiba looked up at Akamaru, who was perched atop his head, and asked, really? As Naruko released Hinata from the embrace and looked around to see who had spoken first, he turned to Shino and asked, Shino, you knew? And who else said that it was real? Shino nodded his head and remarked, yes, I did, but I never said anything. Why? Because you were hiding them. With an eyebrow raised, Kiba questioned, wait, can you understand Akamaru? Huh? Inquired a bewildered Naruko. The voice, coming from Kiba's direction, repeated, he means me, can you understand me? Yeah, I understand you, but who is speaking? A somewhat perplexed Naruko inquired. Since Kiba was certain that she could understand Akamaru, she asked, Naruko, that was Akamaru, and how can you understand him? Naruko's conversation with Akamaru caught Hinata, Shino, and the other members of Team 7 off guard. I don't know, Naruko remarked, glancing at Akamaru. I didn't know I could until now. Kiba, I don't think she is human, she smells too much like a fox, surely you notice it as well. Akamaru let out a scream. Kiba questioned, Naruko, are you secretly an Inuzuka like me? No, and Akamaru is right, I'm a Hanyu, not human, Naruko uttered at a slightly lower volume. Hinata hugged Naruko and said, like Shino, I didn't say anything about your tails, but I also knew about them, Naruko. Naruko said, thank you Hinata, and gave the hug back. The voice behind Naruko was also very familiar. You know Naruko, we are a lot more open-minded than the rest of the villagers, it said. Shika, shouted Naruko joyfully, of course you're here caught up in this troublesome exam, Shikamaru sighed. Shikamaru muttered, this just got a lot more troublesome with you in it, loud enough for them to hear. Kiba grinned and remarked, looks like we are all here, the rookie 9 yay I like it. Sasuke.kun, Ino exclaimed, grabbing Sasuke by the back and giving him a hug. Hey get off me, was Sasuke's grumble. Ah don't you miss me, Ino said in a sweet voice. Naruto approached Sasuke, freed him from Ino, wrapped all of her tails around him, and pulled him into a side hug. Ino, get your hands off him, she exclaimed. With a demanding tone, Ino questioned, why should I? Sakura defended Naruto by retorting, because they are dating Ino. Buddha, now leave them alone. While sporting a tick mark on her head, Ino gave Naruto a fierce glare, but he ignored it with no concern. Another voice yelled, you guys should keep it down, you making people get agitated. All 9 of the rookies looked at the voice. This individual was roughly 5 or 6 years their senior. He has black eyes and long silver hair pulled back in a ponytail. He has on glasses and a Konoha headband. Additionally, he is dressed in a purple sleeveless vest, a light brown shirt with short sleeves, and a light brown cloth that he is wearing around his waist as a makeshift belt. He is accessorizing with black shinobi sandals and purple pants to finish the ensemble. Like Orochimaru, this guy smelled of snakes, so Naruto instantly went on guard and gave a little growl. When Sasuke, Shino, Kiba, and Shikamaru heard Naruto growl at this odd man, they became extra cautious because Naruto doesn't usually act in this manner. You guys just came out the academy right? This isn't a picnic you know, said the individual. Ino, who already hates this guy, asked, who the hell do you think you are? Kabuto pointed to them and remarked, Kabuto, but forget me, look behind you. They all turned to see that everyone in the room was giving them a fierce look and letting loose their murderous intent in an attempt to frighten them. Sakura, Ino, and Hinata gulped as they experienced the consequences of the murderous intent. Sakura noticed that Naruto was trembling a little as she turned to face her. Is Naruto afraid? Sakura pondered. Naruto said, Kurama, would you mind helping me here bit? Let's see who pisses themselves, Kurama grinned. The killing intent on their part abruptly stopped, and Naruto's growling, which is loud enough for everyone in the room to hear, took its place. Naruto's demonic voice growled, oi shitheads, fuck off. Her eyes flashed red, and she immediately released a lot of killing intent, making many people start to perspire and nearly throw up at the sound of her voice and intent. While Lee and his team were fully affected by Naruto, Gaara and his siblings grinned at his response. Ten became quite afraid of Naruto after he accomplished that, and Lee wasn't sure what to think of him. Tough Neji didn't let it bother him. Shikamaru said, like I said, troublesome, with a headshake. Holy shit, remind me not to piss you off, Kiba said, feeling intimidated by Naruto's voice. Well, that was your first. My first time didn't work out so well, Kabuto replied. Asking Kabuto, is this your second time? No, it's my 7th. This is held twice a year and this is my 4th year, Kabuto clarified. Sakura questioned, so you must know a lot about this. When Naruto said, I doubt that, you must suck if you have failed so many times, she was deadpan. Kabuto declared, maybe, but I do have info cards, as he held up a deck of cards. Sakura asked, a little perplexed, info cards. Kabuto knelt down, laid a card on the ground, and then sent his chakra into it. Yes, using my chakra I have created cards on all the ninjas attending this. Here, let me show you, he said. A map of the elemental nation and a graph underneath it appeared on the card after a few seconds of the card being spoof. This has the number of attendants and a breakdown of what country they are from, Kabuto said. 30 teams from Sunagaku no Sato, 21 from Omegakure no Sato, 6 from Kusagaku no Sato, 6 from Takigakure no Sato, 8-7 from Konohagakure no Sato, and even though they're a new village, Odogakure no Sato have sent one team, Kabuto stated. Sasuke inquired, do you have info on individuals? Yes I do, they aren't perfect but I do. So who do you want info on? Replied Kabuto. Hyuga Neji and Rock Lee, Sasuke stated. Uzumaki Naruto, Kiba continued, causing Naruto to turn to face him. As he took 3 cards out of the list and laid them on the ground, Kabuto said, oh, so you know their names. Each card had a picture and statistics of the individuals on it. Hyuga Neji, teammates Rock Lee and 10-10 and their sensei is made a guy. 28D. Rank and 16 circa rank missions. Like you guys, this is their first time doing the exam. Neji is very talented in taijutsu, ninjutsu is unknown and genjutsu is unknown. Considered as the prodigy of the Hyuga clan. Has the title, Rookie of the Year, for his age group. Kabuto clarified what was on the card. Rock Lee all team and mission stats are the same. Taijutsu has greatly increased over the last year, has no talent in ninjutsu or taijutsu and not much else, Kutubo informed them of Lee. Uzumaki Naruto, teammates Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sakura under the sensei Hatake Kakashi. 40D. Rank, 1 circa rank, 1B. Rank, 3A. Rank missions impressive, what the 1S? Rank mission. How did you get that? Kabuto inquired. With the exception of Team 7, the other 9 rookies were taken aback. Naruto stated, the last mission my team was on was ranked S. Ranked, and he would not elaborate. Shaking his head, Shikamaru asked, why am I not surprised? And your states are impressive, highly talented in ninjutsu and taijutsu is quite high. Though you have no talent in genjutsu. And there are a few additional notes here, extremely high chakra and stamina levels, strength is close to that of Tsunade. Hymen is very fast, Kabuto stated in his card. Kabuto put his cards away and got to his feet, saying, so it's not that I suck, it's just that there are a lot of exceptional ninjas here. He knows a lot kid and his scent is just like that other snake bastard. You must keep a very close eye on him, I can sense evil from this guy, warned Kurama. Naruto responded to Kurama by saying, yeah, I know, he knows way too much for any genin no matter how many times they've done this. Although Naruto wanted to prove something, Sasuke and Naruto did not react when they saw 3 people hurrying to Kabuto. They wanted to see what their plan was. A ninja headed straight for Kabuto while wearing a strange metal object with holes in it. Only his left eye is visible due to the bandages covering the ninja's face and fur cloak. The ninja lunged at Kabuto, but he was able to leap back in time and avoid the blow. His glasses broke a few seconds later, and he sagged while suppressing the urge to vomit. Naruto had to cover her eyes and ears as soon as the attack was over because she heard a loud, piercing whistle that made her feel a little lightheaded. Naruto said, "Ah, my ears," as she rubbed them. Poof. In a puff of smoke, a group of Konoha Chunin and Jonin appeared. Thanks for waiting. I am Morino Ibiki, the examiner for the Chunin selection exam's first test, a voice said. Listen well. There will be no unauthorized fighting and even if permission is given, killing will not be tolerated. You got that, Otonin? Ibiki responded. The Otonin responded, yes, I apologize. We are just really looking forward to this test. Ibiki frightened a few people by saying, the pigs who disobey me will fail immediately, got that? With icy, lifeless eyes. Let's start the exam. Each of you will be given a number and you will sit at your corresponding number, then we will hand out the exam, Ibiki said. As Sakura attempted to reassure Naruto, Naruto grumbled, "Ah, come on, a paper test." Really? After saying, "Good luck, Naru-chan," Sasuke pulled Naruto in for a kiss that lasted until they were both exhausted. Sakura, Hinata, and Ino all blushed intensely, but Ino was envious and muttered something about how unfair it was. Ibiki said, "Come on, you lovebirds, get to your sits," in an attempt to separate them. Naruto said, "Good luck, Sasuke-kun," with her eyes wide open after the kiss. 20 minutes later, after everyone had taken their seats and settled in, Ibiki turned around and wrote the rules on the board. While the tests are being handed out, I will explain the rules, he said. A voice yelled, "Rules." Ibiki, "Yes, rules, now shut up and listen," he said. Naruto grumbled, "Damn, why did it have to be a stupid test, once more?" Sitting next to Naruto, Hinata whispered, "Naruto, let's try our best." Hinata, "At least I'm not alone." "Sure, let's do this thing," Naruto said. Rule 1. You will start off with 10 points. Every question you get wrong you will lose a point. So if you get 2 wrong you get 8 points, or if you get 5 wrong you get 5 points, Ibiki clarified the first rule. Second rule. This is a team test, so whether you pass will determine on your team's combined score. So each team which competes can hold on to from the initial team's score of 30, Ibiki said. Someone exclaimed, "What? Why is this a team test?" Ibiki retorted in a firm voice, "Shut up. You have no right to question me. There's a reason for this, so be quiet and listen." What are these rules, and are there any questions? Sakura pondered. The most important rule. Anyone caught cheating by the testing officials will have their points deducted by 2 for every offense, Ibiki said. Ibiki's statement, and the final rule. Those that lose all their initial points will fail along with their 2 teammates, caused some people to yell and grumble. This was not going well, and Naruto slammed her head against the desk. She was fairly certain that her teammates would want to kill her at this very moment if she weren't as close to them as she was. Ibiki said, "Shut it. The exam lasts for 1 hour. Begin." As the test got underway, Naruko made sure to study during her training sessions after realizing she couldn't answer any of the questions after reading them over. After 30 minutes had gone by, Naruko began to panic. 10 minutes into the test, Naruko figured it out, but she was unsure of how to proceed. "I am aware that the goal of this is to obtain information and cheat without being discovered, but I have nothing. Sakura is intelligent and will undoubtedly obtain this, but Sasuke-kun has his Sharingan. Although he lives too far away for me to hear, Kiba has Akamaru. Her Byakugan is Hinata," Naruko reflected. "Kurama, I know I have you, but I have to handle this alone. Should I place all of my money on this final query?" 45 minutes in, Naruko is debating whether or not to wager everything on the final question that will be asked. Hinata offered to show Naruko her paper, but Naruko chose not to because the kunai flew past her head. One by one, team after team was told to leave the room for failing the first exam. In order to avoid causing trouble for Hinata and their teams, Naruko said that it was time for the last question, and the man directly behind him was ejected from the room after challenging Ibiki and claiming that they had no idea what they were doing. "You've finished using your doll, then," Ibiki said, and Naruko turned to see Kankuro walking into the room with a test official standing behind him, his eyes wide with surprise at being apprehended. Kankuro felt relieved when Ibiki said, "Bah, just sit down, it's time for the last question." Ibiki explained, "Before I give the last question there is one last rule that comes with the question, which caused some people to raise an eyebrow. The final rule, a few individuals called, yes, now listen," Ibiki said, perplexing everyone, "you have to choose whether or not to accept the question. What occurs if we decline it?" Tamari exclaimed. Ibiki stated icily, "You fail, which means so does your team." As Kiba exclaimed, "Of course we will take the question." Ibiki made many people's eyes widen before some became indignant. "And now for the rule. If you choose to take it and that person answers it incorrectly, that person will lose the right to take the chunin selection exam again," he said. "Is this a bullshit of what kind? Some men have taken this test more than once." Kiba yelled at Ibiki with rage. "Ha ha 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 ha," said Ibiki. "Well, you are the unfortunate ones. It's my rules this year. However, I'm offering you an escape route." Ibiki gave you a chilly glare and said, "You can decide to leave now and retake the test next year. Your entire team will fail if one of your teammates declines to answer the question, but if you do an answer incorrectly, you will be a genin for life." Sasuke looked at Naruko and said, "You must be under a lot of stress right now, Naruko." "Oh no, what should I do?" Naruko was beginning to panic. One person made the decision to leave at this point, which led to many more leaves. "I couldn't answer shit on my own, Naruko, so I know you had a hard time answering these questions." Sasuke thought, "I know we made a commitment to give this test our best effort, but I won't let my desire for promotion get in the way of your dreams. You are undoubtedly considering us right now. Your only goal, Naruko, is to become Hokage and be accepted by this village." Sasuke began to raise his hand, thinking, "I'm sorry, Naruko, but I won't let your dream be dashed. Despite the fact that I mistreated you during the academy, Naruko, you have always supported me. I now consider you to be my best friend. I'm sorry, Naruko, but I'll keep your dream safe," Sakura thought as she began to raise her hand. Naruko's hand shot high into the air, shocking and surprising both Sakura and Sasuke. "Naruko, you," Sasuke and Sakura both thought simultaneously, their eyes wide. Slam. "Disregard your regulation. I'm willing to answer the question, and I won't back down or flee. I'll find a way to become Hokage daimyo even if I stay a genin." After getting up and slamming her hand against the desk, Naruko uttered those words. "I'll say it again. If you fail, you'll always be a genin. Can you continue to live your life that way?" Ibiki questioned Naruko. "I refuse to flee. I do what my ninja says, and I don't back down." Sasuke shook his head, feeling guilty for ever doubting Naruko, but Naruko's smirk and confidence made both Sakura and Sasuke smile. The rest of the room's eyes widened at Naruko's resolve and were also resolved to accept the question at all costs, while Hinata's eyes widened at Naruko's declaration and she began to feel a great deal of envy for Naruko. Shikamaru and Choji also grinned at Naruko's stunt, and Lee developed a deep admiration for Naruko's youthful brilliance, as he put it. Ibiki glanced around the room and noticed that everyone else was grinning, including the test officials. Ibiki looked at Naruko, who was staring back at him, and thought, "She really is an interesting one." She has blasted everyone's fears and doubt away. She will be a force to be reckoned with. Many people were confused by Ibiki's statement, if no one else is going to leave, then all I have left to say to you is, well done to the 20.6 teams left, you all passed the first exam. What, huh? Many people shouted out, whatever became of the 10th query? Sakura inquired. Ibiki smiled and said, there was no such thing, or rather you could say that the choice was the 10th question, which totally altered his demeanor. So, what was the purpose of the first 9 questions? Tamari exploded. They fulfilled their function. They were there to put your ability to gather information under pressure to the test. Many of you must have realized very fast that you were unable to respond to any of the questions, so you had to cheat, Ibiki said. Those found to have cheated naturally failed. People will risk their lives to obtain information because it is more important than life. Ibiki said, removing his bandana to reveal the burn marks and scars on his audacious head. There is no guarantee that the information will be accurate if you get caught or noticed. When many people saw this, they were horrified and disgusted. Keep in mind that since information is a very potent weapon for your village, people will stop at nothing to obtain it. Ibiki lectured, those who were caught cheating don't deserve to be here. It was a take. Or not. Take question for the 10th question. After putting his bandana back on, Ibiki remarked, you can either choose not to take it and fail but try again next year, or you can choose it and risk losing the right to become chunin, a true leap of faith. Say that when your team is assigned the task of stealing a scroll, you turn into a chunin. Ibiki laid out a scenario. You have no idea what the enemy is like, and you don't know their numbers, skills, or locations. Of course, there might be traps. Do you decide whether or not to accept the mission? Can you spare your comrades' lives during this mission? No, a mission such as this cannot be avoided. To become a chunin captain, one must possess the courage and perseverance to overcome any adversity, Ibiki went on to say. Those jerks who leave for another opportunity because they know there will be another year have no right to be here. I feel that way, Ibiki clarified. Something burst through the side window in front of the class as soon as Ibiki was done, and a banner bearing the name Mitarashi Enko immediately opened and was pinned to the ceiling with 2 kunais. Enko smirked as she stood in front of the banner, and Ibiki emerged from behind it. The examiner for the second exam is me, Mitarashi Enko. Enko yelled. Ibiki shook his head and remarked, you have to learn to read the atmosphere. Sakura deadpanned, this examiner is Naruto. As she noticed a drop of perspiration behind her head. Gosh, that crazy woman is it. Naruko's thoughts were loud in her head. Quote. There are 26 teams remaining, Ibiki. Enko looked at Ibiki and said, your test must have been way too easy, marking it with a checkmark. In response to Enko, Ibiki said, no, this year has a lot of talent, without being intimidated. It doesn't matter what, at the very least, I'll have to cut them in half, Enko grinned. In half? Sakura asked, raising an eyebrow. Listen, maggots, tomorrow at precisely 9 a.m., report to training ground 44. You will fail the second exam before it even begins if you arrive late, Enko stated. Before Enko left, the room was swiftly cleared out, and Ibiki began gathering papers from all over the room. He was a little taken aback when he came across Sakura's paper. Before continuing on to Naruko's paper, which caused his eyes to widen, Ibiki thought, I know for a fact that this girl didn't cheat and yet she answered all the questions correctly. She is already smarter than most chunin. Recalling that Naruko had been asked to take care of the daimyo's daughter some time ago, Ibiki thought, she actually passed with a blank paper. She really is an interesting person. No wonder why the daimyo chose her. Ibiki grinned and walked out of the room, certain that Naruko would completely upend the world.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.